not hate to say that we were kidnapped and brought here. It's true. It's not hate to say that we were Jim Crow, discriminated and segregated. It's true. It's not hate to say that the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in this country, came up with a hypocritical desegregation decision 9 years ago, which they haven't enforced yet. That's not hate. That's true.
You're quoted as having said when an airliner crashed with a number of white people on board that you were glad it happened.
The white race in this country collectively are guilty of these crimes that our people are suffering from collectively. And therefore they will suffer some collective disaster, collective grief. And when that plane crashed in France with 130 white people off.
No one man should withstand the weight of the world on his shoulders and die when it's over. Ain't no global warming, the world getting colder. Ain't nobody doing shit, they taking our culture. Wake up and see y'all, ain't no balance on one side of the seesaw. We at war with Esau, when ain't nobody there with us. My niggas get up, I know what it's like to wake up fucked up. I know what it's like when the pain cut deep. You can't get on your feet and you just wanna stay asleep. When the shit too much, a nigga needs to roll up. And all you got is this money and this still ain't enough. To live is to survive, gotta hustle to stay alive. My girl don't understand, I can see that look in her eyes. And that's the trouble of soul, I pacify with lies. I inflict the pain and wipe the tears of her cries. Baby, I know you heard an apologies in advance. I just pray to God that he give me another chance. Trying to make it to heaven like I one hell of a plan. Dancing with the devil makes me a hell of a man. Yeah, I'm trying to be a better man. But my nigga down south won't put me up 200 hands. He told me if I needed him, put that shit in my hands. Is that a curse or a blessing? Or do I see at the end?
We learned that 120 of them were from the state of Georgia. The state that my own grandfather was a slave in. Why, to me, it couldn't have been anything but an act of God, a blessing from God, and I frankly sincerely pray for a similar blessing from him.
There's levels to this, and I said it like I said it, cause I wanted to hit. I give credit where it's relevant, we better than them. It's evident we set the precedence to elevate men, but we'll never know the end is killing other black men. And how we supposed to trust the hand we eat off, if we hand fed the very poison we feed on. We don't even need all this extra shit they letting us get. It only hold us back from our excellence. Link some, get together, ball, invest in shit. The true value of life. Love my children and wife. Love to all of my niggas who can't be free for the fight. R.I.P. all my niggas who passed on for this life. I love my brothers off the strip, whether he wrong or he right. Let your woman have that glory, baby, I'm wrong when you right. The true glory is through God and how I'm shining my light. Buzz down Cartiers to see my sins in the night. Now what I call my darkest hours, all depends on the price. I just said it ain't with snakes, I seen men become mice. I let my pen speak my mind, the only way I think twice. All that I sacrifice, I shall exceed in this life.
You don't get freedom. Freedom is never
Yeah, what I say? I told you they ain't got no love for you, they ain't come on with you. What I say? I told you there was no real niggas when you gotta deal with them. What I say? I told you she ain't got no love for you, she don't really fuck with you. What I say? I told you take care of your fam, stand on the square, be the man. What I say? I told you they ain't got no love for you, they ain't come on with you. What I say? I told you there was no real niggas, now you gotta deal with it. What I say? I told you she ain't got no love for you, she don't really fuck with you. What I say? I told you take care of your fam, stand on your square, be a man. A cold world, I know. Time moves fast when you tryna chase a bag, that's facts. At last, niggas finally see your check. Haters wanna knock you off your apex. They mad, cause your bitch ain't loyal. Broke the code, put a price on her soul. Get a hold of your life. You could blow overnight, or you could fuck it all and lose control. Suicide is a suicide, yeah. It's a big difference between you and I. And I'm super straight. They say you 6 million ways to die. Choose your fate. I ain't gon' lose the case. Prove your worth, nigga. Move your weight. Keep your nose clean for you lose your face. What up your face value? We don't know your face. I step up in this bitch like I own the place. I pay close attention to they tone, they pace. Is he really real? Will he fold a break? Life is guns and water, baby boy, you straight. And I got it in either hand, I mean I hold your fate. Never know, it could be your time to go today. Who knows, a nigga like me might show you the way. Still is fake with a kiss from a rose on the grave. I stand on anything I say, what I say. What I say. I told you they ain't got no love for you, they ain't come on with you. What I say. I told you there was no real niggas, now you gotta deal with them. What I say. I told you she ain't got no love for you, she don't really fuck with you. What I say. I told you take care of your fam, stand on your square, be a man. What I say. I told you they ain't got no love for you, they ain't come on with you. What I say. I told you there was no real niggas, now you gotta deal with them. What I say. I told you she ain't got no love for you, she don't really fuck with you. What I say. I told you take care of your fam, stand on your square, be a man. My nigga Low just came home from doing 8. Fucking with the wrong niggas in the wrong place. The one you call ace that be all up in your face. Next minute fuck around, help the law build your case. In this rap run you gotta be a dog in this race. Loyalty or death, man, that's all that it takes. I go all the way, you niggas fall by the waist. I see we was never cool, it was all for the ranks. And furthermore, keys open doors. I can never sit and watch my niggas jump overboard. It's over for you straight niggas and I'm the overlord. I know you niggas to the core. Before you hit record, never give a man a sword if he ain't built for war. I see hate galore, not just love and ignore. It motivates me more, keep a nigga going forward. Life come with bullshit and the nigga is all for it. I ain't not be your hustle, but it's money over horse. I gotta feed them, you gotta feed yours. On this path less chosen, ain't no room for detours. Just earn your keep and keep yours. Let be and be more, but be sure you ready, cause shit ain't never finna be the same like it was before. You know what they say about when it rains for sure. The game is pure through my veins and pores. When I say
What's good? What's good? Shalom, shalom. What's cracking? What's good? We back up in it. You know, getting back to the prophecies of things, right? And all that, right? Getting back to the prophecies and stuff, right? So yeah, I know you see the title. A God that fights for his people is a God to fear, right? A God that fights for his people is a God to fear, right? Of course, giving all praises to the Most High God, Yahweh, we do so in his only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, who the world might know as Jesus Christ, right? So we're going to get into it, you know, dealing with end time prophecies, the return of Christ, you know, the redemption of the Lord's people, right? The judgment of certain nations, right? Well, not just certain nations, but the nations, in a particular nation, and, you know, chiefly, right? Which is Mystery Babylon, the daughter of Babylon. So yeah, we're gonna get into it though. And all that. You know, cause we like to visit some of these prophecies and you know, check these timelines out and see where we at in this thing and understand that you know, we almost out. You know, we in the fourth quarter, right? It's like, you know, it's like fourth quarter right now. If this was basketball, you know, it'd be like fourth quarter, it'd be like four, you know, and being that it's the fourth quarter, we gotta be like Michael Jordan. You know, they used to call him fourth quarter Jordan. You know, gotta be like Michael Jordan in the fourth quarter, right? So we have to enter this thing. You know, and understanding there's only a few prophecies left, before this whole thing is all wrapped up. So let's get into it though. Let's start with hold on, let's lock it really quick. Yeah, for sure like it. We back. But yeah. So yeah, let's start with Second Ezra's, right? Start with Second Ezra's. The book of Ezra, Second Ezra's. And chapter 2. So Second Ezra's chapter 2. Real quick. When you get there, say amen. So so yeah, Second Ezra's, right? Chapter 2, we're gonna start at verse 13. I was just trying to get this over here real quick. So, well, yeah, before we read Second Ezra, let's go to Matthew 24 real quick. Matthew 24 and 19. Let's get that just really fast, right? Matthew 24 and 19. Because again, we got to understand what's happening, right? And, you know, being, you know, vigilant and looking at the times and stuff like that. We got to, you know, try to understand where we at in this thing. So Matthew 24 and 19 says, "And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days." Right? So, you know, you, a parent, you know, you have like some young children, during these peril times, it's going to be hard in those days, you know, trying to survive and move around and stuff like that when you have, you know, little infants or toddlers with you know, little small children. And it says, "But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day." Right? So, you know, whenever all hell do actually break loose, right? You know, you want to pray that it's, you know, it's a comfortable time for you. You know, it's not in the winter, you know, because in the winter, you know, it could be a horrible winter. It could be one of those winters where, you know, it'd be like, you know, a lot of snow, you know, you have below zero temperatures, you know, for a while, you know, so it can be a horrible winter. Then also traveling in that time, you know, because it's not like you're going to, in that day you have to take whatever you got, you know, it ain't no, well, let me, you know, try to get me some winter clothes and some jackets and some snow pants and a snowsuit, none of that, right? Whatever you got in your hands. So you got to hope that it's, you know, it's in the springtime, you know, I say, let me see. I'll say preferably towards the end of the winter, because then that would give you the spring, summer, you know, fall, right? So, so you hope that whenever, you know, in that great day, you know, we pray that, you know, we can be, you know, it can be durable in that day. It won't be this total hell because it's, you know, it's a, you know, because the weather conditions as well. Then it says, And it says, and then shall the great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. You know, because it's about to be some stuff that the world haven't seen in a while. You know, some stuff that's going to go on that, you know, haven't took place in a long time. You know, well, not just a long time, but ever, right? It's going to be some stuff that people haven't seen, you know, because it's going to be horrible, right? Then it says, except those days be shortened, there should be no flesh saved. But for the elect's sake, those days should be shortened. So, because, again, World War III is coming, whether you like it, believe it, understand it, or not. And these people have war-ending weapons, and they are willing to use them, and they are going to use them, right? And these people are willing to destroy everything. And because they're willing to destroy everything, it is only merciful of the Most High that he said, for, where it says, except those days be shortened, there should be no flesh saved. For the elect's sake, those days should be shortened, right? And that's what we gotta understand, you know, because these people are vicious, and the Most High God know it, and because of that, those days shall be shortened. And shortened meaning not like, okay, they're gonna, you know, we're gonna cut the days in half. But shortened meaning like, you know, it's not that you're going to have like, you know, you're going to go through this thing unscathed. Because like we can read in Zechariah, you know, 13, I believe, about the going to the fire. But meaning that you're not going to have as many hard days as some of the non-believers will have. Because you believe and kept the faith, your hard days that you experience is not going to seem like, you know, hell. It's not going to seem like long and tumultuous and all of that. It's going to be as they were shortened, right? Right here, 2nd Ezra 2 and 13, and it says, Go ye and receive, go and ye shall receive, and pray for a few days. And that's what we need to do. Pray for those few days. Pray for that safety, that peace, you know, that serenity, you know, that protection, you know, those few days. While all hell is breaking loose around us, you know, again, not to say that we're going to come through the thing unscathed, but pray that you know, sometimes you can go through some stuff and it just seems like it's forever. You know, it seems like whatever that problem is, it just seems like it's never ending, right? And so, we don't want problems like that. That's why it says, pray for a few days unto you that they may be shortened. The kingdom is already prepared for you. Prepared for you. Watch. Right? So that's what we have to do. We have to be in watch mode and observant, keep the faith, and, you know, and so forth, and pray for a few days. Pray for that rest. You know, pray for that ease, that protection in those days. Right? And we do so as we keep the commandments and the faith. Right? Let's get this real quick. Right? Because we got to understand. Because, you know, some of us lived through the Gulf War, you know, if you want to call it that. The Gulf Stream War, the Iraq, Afghanistan, right? You know, this current one, right? So, now these are like battles and stuff like that, wars or whatever, but our generation haven't seen a global war, a world war, right? And we got to understand that even for the average citizen life changes drastically, right? Because we have to understand that stuff has to get rationed, right? And soldiers and stuff are the priority because they need them to fight. They need them healthy and able to be on the field, to do what they need them to do, right? And then understanding that this one is going to be the final battle, right? This one is going to be the end all be all. It's going to be a little rough, like we just read, in Matthew. Hold on one more time. It says, woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. Pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. Right? So it's crazy. So, stuff that's going to go on that we're not prepared for, because, again, our generation haven't seen war. Right? And the stuff that happened in the past, just multiply that by biblical proportions. Right? So let's check this out real quick. Let's get some World War II facts really quick, if we may. Let's hold up. Hold on, I'm trying to get this thing there. Trying to get this thing to do what it do. Oh, okay, I think that's... Hold up. Do I gotta do the whole thing like that? I think I gotta do the whole thing like that. Let's see. Boom. Alright, I found what I was looking for. Alright, hold on one second. Bear with me. Just trying to go scroll back up to the top. Alright, let's start right here. Alright, bear with me. Alright, I'm about to play it. Boom. So, now this is right here, this is a general thing of what was going on, just around the world during those times of war, during World War II and so forth, what the average civilian and so forth was doing. So just check this out real quick.
Which side of the war their country was on, and how close they were to the active front lines. However, across the globe, the civilian experience was defined by scarcity, fear, loss of freedom, and total mobilization. Here is a breakdown.
So, a loss of freedom, and what it says, boom. says loss of freedom and total mobilization. You know, it's like martial law. And this place is prone to martial law, right? Or martial law adjacent tactics, right? We've seen it during the COVID thing, right? And so, yeah, let's get some more of this.
What daily life looked like across different regions. 1. The home front in the Allied nations, US, UK, USSR, United Kingdom, the Blitz and bombing. Major cities were subjected to intense night bombings. Civilians slept in underground shelters, subway stations, or backyard Anderson shelters. Rationing. Food, meat, sugar, butter, eggs, fuel, and clothing were strictly rationed. The government promoted victory gardens and make do and mend campaigns. Blackouts. Complete city blackouts were enforced every night to hide targets from enemy bombers, making street navigation difficult and dangerous. Evacuations. Over 1.5 million children and mothers were evacuated from cities to rural areas for safety. Soviet Union, USSR, extreme hardship. Civilians bore an extraordinarily heavy burden. Millions lived directly under Nazi occupation or in besieged cities, like Leningrad, where around 1 million civilians died of starvation and cold during an 872-day siege. Industrial mobilization. Whole factories were dismantled, moved east of the Ural Mountains, and rebuilt. Men, women, and teenagers worked 12 to 14-hour days in freezing conditions with minimal food rations. United States. Relative physical safety. The U.S. mainland was largely spared direct physical destruction, but daily life changed drastically.
Now, that first part right there is important. It says, U.S. mainland was largely spared directly physical destruction. You know, because, you know, America has these two big oceans that, as buffers, and got two big old countries that flank it on the north and the south. So it's kind of hard to invade and stuff like that without being detected. But again, the Bible says, "Oh, virgin daughter, come sit in the dust," right? You will no longer be called, beautiful and delicate. I'm paraphrasing, right? Meaning this place is going to get touched up, believe it or not, right?
Items like gasoline, tires, shoes, meat, sugar, and coffee were strictly managed using ration booklets. Social shift. Millions of women entered the defense workforce. Rosie the Riveter. And millions migrated to industrial hubs. Over 120,000 Japanese Americans were forcibly relocated to incarceration camps. 2.
So then, in case they don't like to talk about this part of history of them putting the Japanese into determined camps, concentration camps, right? So, what do you think them FEMA thing is this for? Why do you think all these abandoned supermarkets that they used to have with no windows and stuff, right? What do you think they're using that stuff for, or going to use it for, right? Interesting.
Europe. France, Poland, USSR, Europe's Jews. For civilians living under Axis military occupation, conditions were severe and often deadly. Starvation as a weapon. Food was systematically confiscated to feed the German population and army. In Greece, the Great Famine of 1941-1942 claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. In the Netherlands, the Hunger Winter of 1944-1945 saw civilians eating tulip bulbs to survive. Forced labor. Millions of European civilians were deported to Germany to work as forced laborers in war factories under brutal conditions. Terror and resistance. Curfews, hostage-taking, and public executions were common responses to acts of resistance. The Holocaust. European Jews, Roma, disabled individuals, and political dissidents were stripped of rights, forced into overcrowded, starving ghettos, and ultimately systematic extermination in death camps. 3. Axis nations. Germany and Japan. Germany. Early war versus late war. Early on, living standards remained relatively high due to resources seized from conquered territories. By 1943, conditions plummeted. Strategic bombing. Allied air raids devastated German cities, e.g., Hamburg, Dresden, Berlin. Millions were left homeless, living in rubble without basic utilities. Total mobilization. By late war, food rations collapsed, and young teenagers and elderly men were conscripted into militia units. Japan. Severe shortages. As Allied blockades cut off trade routes, basic commodities, medicine, and food vanished. Japanese civilians faced near starvation levels of nutrition by 1944-1945. Firebombing and atomic warfare. Massive Allied firebombing raids burned down wood and paper urban areas. A single raid on Tokyo in March 1945 killed an estimated 100,000 people. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 brought catastrophic loss of civilian life and radiation sickness. Key themes of World War II civilian life feature daily reality, diet. High-calorie foods disappeared. Diets relied heavily on root vegetables, grains, and official ration allowances.
So, like I said, so food gets shortened, because number one, you have inflation, things get expensive. The poor get poorer, things doesn't get easier, right? If you're struggling, you're going to be really struggling in that day, right? It gets rough because we don't understand the toll that real war takes, and we just think, they're gonna drop a few bombs, they're gonna shoot a few people, then everything gonna be cool, right? But people forgot when Russia first went into Ukraine, how the gas prices shot up. They had to, work their little magic, little manipulation stuff to kind of somewhat bring it down to reasonable looking numbers over time, right? So it's crazy.
Markets thrived everywhere. Family life. Families were fractured. Men were off fighting. Women joined the workforce. And children were often evacuated or pressed into war efforts. Psychological stress. Living under constant threat of air raids, grief over lost family members at the front, and propaganda bombardment created severe chronic stress. In short, while an American civilian experienced disruption, job booms, and mild inconvenience, a civilian in Eastern Europe, East Asia, or a besieged European city faced daily life and death struggles against starvation, bombardment, and terror.
Let's get a few more real quick. So, as you can see, like, life changed. Stuff got hard. People have to, that's why the Bible says, gather yourself together, O nation not desired. Because, food shortage, famine, death, all the stuff that we just read, primary, a lot of that stuff was happening to the Eastern countries, the Eastern European countries. But you got to understand, this thing, this one, where the Bible speaks of the 7 plagues in the Bible, is preserved for this place, the daughter of Babylon, Babylon the Great, right? So everything we're reading, or listening to, should I say, like I said, multiply that by biblical proportions. Think this is the one
person, and especially for lower income and working class families who already had very little buffer. World War II didn't just alter daily routines, it stripped life down to basic survival.
So even for, like I said, for poor people, it gets rougher, right?
Resources became scarce. Those at the economic bottom felt the squeeze first and hardest. How drastically life changed depended heavily on where you were on the map, falling generally into 3 distinct levels of severity. 1. The survival crisis, Eastern Europe, occupied territories in East Asia.
And we gotta keep this in mind too. Now, the facts that we're listening to is from war that cover World War II and some other stuff from World War I. Now, and we can we can understand from the stuff that we're listening to is kind of horrible. We probably wouldn't want to live through that, right? So again, just apply that to this place, and again, multiply it by biblical proportions.
In these regions, life plummeted from hardship into total devastation, systemic starvation. In places like Poland, Greece, the Soviet Union, and China, food was systematically confiscated by occupying forces. Lower-income urban workers had no land to grow their own food or money to buy off the black market. Millions resorted to eating sawdust bread, wallpaper paste, boiled leather, and tulip bulbs. During the siege of Leningrad, the daily bread ration for workers dropped to just 250 grams, half that for non-workers, much of it mixed with sawdust. Destruction of shelter. Working-class neighborhoods and cities were often the hardest hit by strategic bombing and ground combat. Without the resources to flee or rebuild, families lived in damp cellars, bombed-out ruins, or makeshift shanties without running water, heat, or electricity through freezing winters. Forced labor and displacement. In occupied Europe and Asia, poor populations were routinely rounded up for forced labor. Millions were ripped from their families to work in German ammunition factories or on Japanese construction projects like the Burma-Siam Railway under lethal conditions. 2. Total austerity. Great Britain and the Axis nations. In countries with heavily managed war economies, daily life for the working class became an exercise in relentless rationing and physical insecurity. Eradication of choice rationing leveled the playing field to an extent, but for poor families it meant a complete loss of variety. Meat, butter, tea, and sugar were severely restricted. Clothing was strictly controlled under programs like Britain's utility scheme. Items were made with minimal fabric, no pockets, and standardized cuts. The black market divide. While government set price caps to keep basics affordable, a thriving black market emerged. The wealthy could still buy extra meat or fuel under the table, while lower-income families had to get by strictly on their ration cards and whatever they could forage or repair. Compounded trauma. In industrial towns across the UK, Germany, and Japan, working-class housing was situated right next to factories, shipyards, and rail yards, the primary targets for enemy bombers. Poor civilians bore the brunt of the air raids, sleeping in damp air raid shelters night after night while working grueling shifts by day. 3. The economic paradox. The United States. The U.S. was unique. While the war brought fear and disruption for millions of working-class and impoverished Americans, it actually brought an unprecedented economic boom that lifted them out of the Great Depression. From poverty to employment, the war effort created millions of high-paying industrial jobs. Families who had suffered through a decade of dust storms, unemployment, and breadlines suddenly had steady income. Mass internal migration. Millions of poor rural Americans, both white and black, migrated from the rural South to West Coast and northern industrial centers like Detroit, Richmond, and Los Angeles for shipyard and factory work. New hardships in the boom. While money was coming in, life was far from easy. Severe housing shortages. Migration overwhelmed cities. Working-class families often lived in overcrowded boarding houses, trailers, or hot bedding arrangements where three work.
Because although America got rich after the war, but you know the old saying, the rich got rich and the poor got poor. So, they, the elites, they got rich. America got rich, they grew in status and all that. But the people got poor.
One bed and 8-hour shifts. Rationing and scarcity. You might have had money, but you couldn't buy a new car, new tires, nylon stockings, or extra meat. Everything from shoes to canned goods required government stamps. Racial and social strain. The sudden influx of diverse populations into tight working-class neighborhoods led to intense...
So now, too, in understanding, again, these are things that happened during World War II. And, and the metrics, the mathematics that we're using, multiply that by biblical proportions. So, it says, right here, it says, you might have money, but you couldn't buy a new car, new tires, nylon stockings, or extra meat. Everything from shoes to canned goods required government stamps. So, in Revelation, it talks about you neither can buy nor sell unless he had the mark of the beast, right? So again, you gotta understand why we say just multiply it by biblical proportions, right? So because history repeats itself, right? You gotta understand that's how God teaches. Just like when you go to school and you sit in the classroom and the teacher is teaching on the lesson, she just don't spend that one day, that 1 hour, that 1:30, 30 minutes just going over that subject. She teaches it until she feels that the classroom pretty much gets it. So history repeats itself, and that's how God teaches, right? That's why we go through certain things over and over again until we, get the lesson in it, right? Moving on.
Culminating in events like the 1943 Detroit race riot and the Zoot Suit riots in Los Angeles. Summary of the shift life aspects before the war, during the war diet. Cheap, low-quality food, local availability. Strictly regulated by government stamps, heavy reliance on grain/root crops, or extreme famine. Work. Scarcity of jobs, post-depression. Extreme labor shortages. 12 to 14-hour shifts. Women and teens entering heavy industry. Home life. Stable, if poor, neighborhood communities. Mass evacuations, shattered families, blacked out cities, and living under constant fear of bombing. Social status. Marginalized economically. Reframed as essential soldiers of the home front, though structural inequities remain.
So that's what was going on, right? During this wartime stuff, right? So we gotta understand that, it's not peaches and cream and, we just gonna sit back and just, everything gonna be all good. That's why Christ told us it should be like in the days of Noah. There was, being married, giving in marriage and all that stuff, right? How it go. So, meaning that we were just living life and not paying attention to what's really going on around us, right? And right, so there's a lot of stuff going on. Let's get it. Let's get a few more.
World War I created brief moments of economic opportunity, most notably opening up northern factory jobs that sparked the Great Migration. It also triggered an intense wave of racial violence, institutional repression, and deep disillusionment for Black Americans. Here's a breakdown of the major negative impacts and side effects experienced by Black America during the World War I era. 1. Violent racial backlash and the Red Summer of 1919. The influx of hundreds of thousands of Black Southerners into northern and midwestern industrial cities sparked severe racial friction over housing, jobs, and political power. The Red Summer, 1919. Following the end of the war, white mobs, often joined by returning white soldiers, launched violent race riots in over 36 cities across the country, including Chicago, Washington, D.C., Omaha, and Elaine, Arkansas. Hundreds of Black Americans were killed, thousands were left homeless, and Black neighborhoods were burned. Resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. The wartime period saw the rebirth and rapid expansion of the KKK, which expanded out of the rural South into northern industrial cities, framing Black migration as a...
And in case you're not getting a theme here, it gets worse for Black people during these times. Whenever America has a cold, Black people have the flu. You gotta understand that. And there's data on this too. I should have pulled it up. Whenever white America is experiencing whatever they consider an existential crisis that's going on in America, they always vent and take out their frustrations on the Black and brown people, right? So that's why you can, during this time you can hear about the discrimination and the unaliving and stuff that was going on, the lynchings and stuff, right?
American identity. Lynchings and vigilante violence. Lynchings remained rampant throughout the war years. Returning Black veterans who wore their military uniforms in public were often targeted, assaulted, or lynched by white mobs who viewed their service and demands for equality as a threat to white supremacy. 2. Pervasive military discrimination and abuse. Over 380,000 Black Americans served in the U.S. military during World War I, but their treatment was overwhelmingly discriminatory. Relegated to labor battalions, nearly 89% of Black soldiers were barred from combat roles and instead placed in segregated services supply units, forced into grueling physical labor, such as digging trenches, loading ships, and building roads under white officers who were often openly hostile. Segregated units and French deployments. The U.S. Army refused to let black combat troops fight alongside white Americans.
And it's crazy too, because, and I'm pretty sure to this day, I'm sure, those of our people that's in the armed forces, they may have a few stories. But from the beginning of time, since we put ourselves in their armies, we have to suffer racism and discrimination and subjugation, right? So even back then, they were still, being discriminatory towards us with the uniform on. And I can imagine today, it still goes on. Because throughout history, we can't see a time where it didn't go on. Right? And it's crazy.
The famous 369th Infantry Regiment, the Harlem Hellfighters, and other combat units had to be assigned directly to the French Army, which welcomed them and equipped them. U.S. smear campaigns overseas. Fearing that French civilians would treat black soldiers as equals, the U.S. military issued official warnings to French authorities, such as the memo Secret Information Concerning Black American Troops, urging them not to socialize with black soldiers or praise them too highly. 3. Severe housing exploitation and urban segregation. As the Great Migration accelerated, black migrants arrived in northern cities to find that economic opportunities.
Now that's just a hater move right there, because the French, if no other group of white people know anything about black people, the French should know. Don't mess with them black people over there. They got their butt kicked. Napoleon got his ass kicked, right? They kicked the French ass so bad that, Haiti got to pay them reparations, right? It's crazy, right? So the French was like, well, shoot, let's get them niggas that kicked our ass. Shit, they whooped our ass. And America hating us like, nah, I know they whooped your ass, though, but don't tell them that, because them niggas just don't tell them that, because then they gonna think, we don't want them to think about anything, So that was a hater move, to say the least.
Harsh living conditions. Hyper-segregated neighborhoods. White property owners, real estate boards, and local governments used restrictive covenants, legal agreements blocking sales to black buyers, to confine black residents to overcrowded, deteriorating neighborhoods, such as Chicago's Black Belt or New York's Harlem. Exploitative rents. Because housing options were artificially restricted, landlords routinely charged black tenants significantly higher rents than white tenants for substandard, poorly maintained, and unheated housing. Overcrowding and health crises. Overcrowded living conditions contributed to high rates of tuberculosis, pneumonia, and elevated infant mortality rates in urban black communities during and immediately after the war years. 4. Labor exploitation and workplace hostility. While wartime industrial demands created jobs, black workers faced systemic inequities on the job site. Lowest paying, most dangerous jobs. Black workers were generally restricted to unskilled, heavy, or hazardous labor in steel mills, meatpacking plants, and foundries, with little to no opportunity for promotion. Exclusion from labor unions. Most major labor unions, such as the American Federation of Labor, excluded black workers or relegated them to segregated, powerless locals. Used as strikebreakers, northern industrialists frequently hired black workers to break white union strikes. This tactic was deliberately designed by management to stoke racial animosity, leading directly to explosive violence like the East St. Louis riot of 1917, where dozens of black residents were murdered. 5. Federal repression and civil liberties violations. The U.S. government viewed black activism and anti-war sentiment as a threat to national security. Surveillance of black press and leaders. The federal government, through the Bureau of Investigation, the precursor to the FBI and the Post Office, placed black newspapers like the Chicago Defender and leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, and A. Philip Randolph under heavy surveillance. Censorship and Espionage Act. Black publishers who criticized military segregation, highlighted lynching.
And just remember, as we going over these World War II facts of how civilian life was, again, multiply this by biblical proportions.
The question why black men should fight for democracy abroad when they lacked it at home were threatened with prosecution under the Espionage Act of 1917, or had their mailing privileges revoked. Summary impact area. Pre-World War I reality. Wartime and post-World War I side effect violence. Concentrated primarily in the Jim Crow South. Expanded nationally into major northern, midwestern urban centers. Red Summer. Military. Limited roles in regular units. Mass draft into segregated labor units. Active efforts by military leadership to undermine black dignity. Housing. Rural tenant farming / sharecropping. Confined to overcrowded, overpriced urban ghettos via restrictive legal covenants. Civic status. Disenfranchised in the South. Met with violent suppression when demanding civil rights after military service. The ultimate irony of World War I for Black America was that while the nation fought abroad under the banner of making the world safe for democracy, it doubled down on racial repression at home, setting the stage for the modern civil rights movement in the decades that followed.
This is Revelation 12 and 17. Right? It says, and the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which kept the commandments of God. So this is talking about the Israelites, God's people, right? And the dragon, in this case, is talking about the people of Edom, right? And it says, and the dragon was wroth with the woman. The woman is Israel, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which is us, which kept the commandments of God. So that's why they constantly oppress us and subjugate us and commit violent acts against us, right? Because the dragon, which is the so-called white man, woman, and child, the beast system, is at odds with the people of God. And it says, was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which kept the commandments of God, and have a testimony of the Mashiach Yahushua, right? So these people is against us, right? So back over here to second address. So, we have to, like I said, so all this, that's just a little stuff that was going on, but those things that we heard that was going on with the civilian life, again, multiply that by biblical proportions and direct that towards this place, right? So back over here. Second address 2 and 13. Go ye and receive and pray a few days unto you that they may be shortened. The kingdom is already prepared for you. Watch. Right? You have to watch. Because the kingdom is already prepared. Let's go to 14 real quick. Jump up to chapter 14. Real quick, 14. In chapter 14 and 11. Second Ezra 14 and 11 says this. It says, for the world is divided into 12 parts. Right? So, again, because that's why back here it says, pray for a few days unto you that they may be shortened. The kingdom is already prepared for you. Watch. Right? So we have to be watching, be circumvent, pay attention to the times, and understand where we at in this timeline. Because, again, to tell us, for the world is divided into 12 parts. And the 10th part of it are gone already. And half of the 10th part. Right? So, that's why I started off by saying that we're in the fourth quarter, right? And because we're in the fourth quarter, 2 minutes to go, we got to be like fourth quarter Jordan, right? And it says, the world is divided into 12 parts, and the 10 parts of it are gone already, and half of the 10th part. There are remaineth that which is after the half of the 10th part, right? So, and that's where we're living in now, right? That's how we know that we're close to the end, because we can look at biblical prophecy and line it up and see that we are in the final kingdom before the Mashiach comes back, right? Let's get this really quick. 2nd Ezra 6 and 9. It says, for Esau is the end of the world, right? And Esau is the current power that's over this planet right now. The people of Edom. You know, people may know them as the so-called Caucasians. But the Bible says, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning that followed. Right? So, and even getting into the statue in Daniel, when you break down the statue of Daniel, start from the head all the way down to the feet. Edom is that last kingdom, even though from the waist down is Edom, all the way down. But it's different sets of Edom, different, groups. But, the final kingdom will be under Edom, and they are known as the beast, right? With 7 heads and 7 horns. And that's speaking of their NATO and their EU, right? So, and it says, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followed, right? Because the Israelites have next, right? Because we have to understand that their fall is the Israelites, rising. And you can't have 2 superpowers, right? And so Christ is coming to rule, and he's coming to be king of his people and king of the world, right? And if he's the only government, the only say-so, you cannot have any other power on this planet but the power of God and his son, the Mashiach Yahushua, right? For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followed, right? So we got to understand that, because these people, when we see these people in rulership, we have to know that we are at the end, because the Bible tells us so. Because they will be ruling at the end, right? Back over here. So let's keep it up. So, yeah, back over here. So yeah, back over here. Matter of fact, let's get chapter 16 real quick. 2nd Ezra 16. Matter of fact. And 16 and 62. And it says, yeah, in the spirit of the Almighty God, which made all things, and searched out all hidden things in the secret of the earth. So God created all things. He knows the ins and outs of everything about this whole planet, right? Nothing that can hide. It says, surely he knows your inventions and what ye think in your hearts. So God knows the mind of man. He knows what we thinking. You can't fool God and think you're getting something over him, right? And it says, and search out the hidden things in secret of the earth, and surely he knows the inventions and what ye think in your hearts, even them that sin and would hide their sins, right? And, because some people think they can do stuff and just hide it, and nobody's going to find out. God going to forget about it or whatever. Maybe God didn't see that, right? Because it was dark outside, right? So, and that's what people, convince themselves, especially the wicked of this world. But you got to understand it don't work like that, right? It says, and ye in the spirit of the Almighty God, which made all things, and search out the hidden things in search of the earth. So God is, he understands, and he's searched out these things in the earth. There's nothing that people can hide from the Most High God and think that they're getting away with, and he's not going to see, right? So let's get 2nd Ezra 13 real quick, right? Let's go to 2nd Ezra 13 real quick. And let's start Matter of fact. Put it. Hold up. Let's get Second Ezra's first. Second Ezra chapter 2 real quick in 43. That's what I'm looking for. Right. So but let's start. Let's start at 38, right? So now we gotta understand that Christ is coming to rule and he's giving out rulership to his people, right? And his people has been brought from the different lands that they're scattered to, right? So now they're, gathered and all that stuff, right? So this is what's going on, right? So let's pick it up at 2 and 38. Second Ezra 2 and 38. And it says, Arise up and stand, and behold, the number of those that be sealed in the feast of the Lord, which are departed from the shadow of the world, right? So, these people that left the ways of the world and, kept the ways of God, kept the commandments, stayed in the truth, right? Then it says, and have received the glorious garments of Yahweh, right? Because you want to receive that glorious garments of Yahweh, that white robe, right? And it says, take thy number, O Zion, and shut up those of thine that are clothed in white, which have fulfilled the law of the Lord, right? So, hold on. I didn't even want to go here, but I think Christianity got a problem here. What it say one more time? It says, which are departed from the shadow of the world, and have received glorious garments of Yahweh. Take thy number, O Zion, and shut up those of thy that are clothed in white, which have fulfilled the law. So they will tell you, Christ came to fulfill the law, so we ain't got to do it. So, but these individuals that are receiving these white robes on the day of judgment, they have fulfilled the law of God, like Christ fulfilled the law of God. So we got a problem here, right? I think somebody got to explain that, right? Somebody. Because Christianity tell you don't keep the laws of God because Christ fulfilled it. But then the people that's going to be clothed in white robes, that's going to be getting honored by Christ, they also fulfilled it. So what does fulfilling actually means? Huh? Right? Not what they told you that it meant, obviously. But moving on, I'm about to get sidetracked. Anyway, it says, take thy number, O Zion, and shut up those of thy that are clothed in white, which have fulfilled the law of the Lord. Right? Because Christians don't teach you to fulfill the law of the Lord. It says Christ did it. right? I said I was going to leave it alone, but I can't. You know, that's just like, I used this example before. That's like, if you know somebody that have a perfect driving record, you know, they never received a ticket, never got in an accident, you know, no type of driving infractions at all, right? And then they pass away with that perfect driving record. So then one day you get pulled over by the police and for speeding or whatever case may be, and a cop decided to write you a ticket, and you say, well, hey, why are you writing me a ticket? You know, such and such, he died and he never had a traffic ticket in his life. He never ran a red light. He did the traffic law perfectly, right? I watched him do it. So why are you giving me a ticket, right? Do that make sense? Because that's what Christianity would teach you to believe. But when we can read that those are dying that are clothed in white, which have fulfilled the law of the Lord. The number of thy children whom thou longest for is fulfilled. Beseech of power of Yahweh that thy people which have been called from the beginning may be hallowed. Right? So who's the people that was called from the beginning? The Israelites, right? He called us from the beginning. Then it says, I, Ezra, saw upon the mountain of Zion great people whom I could not number. Right? You know, so it says great people who he could not number. And that's talking about the millions and millions of Israelites that's going to be gathered, right, to the Mashiach Yahushua, right? So that's what's going on there, right? So we got to understand what's going on, that Christ is coming to gather his people, right? So, and that's what was going on, right? And hold up. Let's keep reading. I ain't done yet. And it says, in the midst of them was a young man. That's who we know as the Mashiach Yahushua Christ, that black man, right? Very fearsome. And it says, and I, Ezra, saw upon the Mount Zion the great people whom I could not number, and they all praised the Lord with song. And in the midst of them, there was a young man of high stature. So this guy was tall, you know, he wasn't like this, you know, he stood out, right? The Mashiach Yahushua, it says, with high stature, taller than the rest, and upon every one of their heads he set crowns. So this is the Mashiach Yahushua, who the world knows as the Christ, and he's putting crowns on the Lord's people's head, right, at this moment, right? That's what he's doing, right? He's giving everybody their crowns and stuff, right? Right? That's what's happening, right? And it says, in the midst of them was a young man of high stature, taller than the rest, and upon every one of their heads he set crowns, and were more exalted, which I marvel at greatly. So he's looking at these multitude of people that look like kings and people of nobility and royalty, right? And he's like, dang, who is these people? They must be the coders of the coders. God damn it, those are the damn Israelites. Then, but who is this guy who's taller than the rest, who's giving these people their glory, their power? He must be the head honcho. Who's this guy, right? So he just marveled and was as amazed, because not only was he amazed at the order and the structure and the power and the magnificence of the Lord's people that was receiving those crowns and their white robes, then the one that was giving them to him was even more extravagant. And what it says, and I marvel greatly, right? So that was going on, right? Having the time of our life, you know what I'm saying? Living our best life, right? Doing that stuff, right? Then all of a sudden, while we chilling, shooting some b-ball outside of the school, and it was a couple of guys that was up to no good, started trying to make trouble in the neighborhood, right? 2nd Ezra 13. And it came to pass after 7 days I dreamed a dream by night, and lo, there arose a wind from the sea, and that and that it moved all the ways thereof. You know, and this wind is talking about war, talking about armies, talking about nations, talking about people, right? And it says, and I behold, and lo, the man waxed strong with the thousands of heavens, with the millions and millions, right? It's that black man who the people know as Jesus Christ. And what it says, and I behold, and lo, that man waxed strong with the thousands of heavens, and with he turned his countenance and looked, and all the things trembled that were seen under him. So so Christ is standing there with all power, right? Looking upon the earth, and the armies of the world is rushing in, right? And as he's looking at the armies coming from every which way, he's staring them down, and fear is coming into them, right? Because they don't know what the heck is this, right? They just know that they got the order to go to the Middle East and go fight this being, right? That's all they know, right? And it says this. And whatsoever the voice went out of his mouth, they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth fell when it flee from the fire, right? So very powerful, man, right? When he speak, the earth trembles, right? Very fearsome, right? Then it says, this is not no wimpy, sissified, Caesar Borgia Jesus that they present to everybody. You know who that is. That's the white, stringy-haired Jesus that everybody be putting on their wall and stuff like that. You know, tattooing on their neck and getting on their chains, right? Not that guy. That's a wimp, right? Not that guy. This guy right here. It says, and whatsoever the voice went out of his mouth, they that burnt, that heard his voice, like as the earth filled when it flee from fire. And after this I behold, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men outnumbered from the four winds of heaven, to subdue the men that came out of the sea. So now all the armies of the world, because America done tricked all these damn countries to put their whole everything on the line, right? Because it tells us that they're going to gather all these nations together, right? So they done got on the radio and say, hey, look, I know we probably fighting each other right now. You know, I know we got our little World War III going on. You know, it's cool and all. But we have an extraterrestrial threat going on over here, right? It's a bunch of black guys in spaceships that, and we got to do something about this. I think we need to put this war, on hold for a second and go handle those niggers that just came out of the sky with that shiny ship. Who that nigga on that ship? Right? What's that? Django? Who that nigga on that net? Who that nigga on that net? So that's how they gonna be feeling. Like, who's that black man on that dango fake craft? Right? So it says this. And I behold, and lo, he had graven himself a great mountain and flew upon it, and behold, and flew upon it. And I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not. And after this I beheld, and lo, all they that were gathered together to subdue him were so afraid, yet durst fight. So Christ, he went to go position himself to protect the people. Because when it says, and after this I beheld, lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men. It says, and I beheld, and lo, he had graven himself a great mountain and flew upon it. Because the nations always refer, sometimes referenced as mountains and stuff. So he, went to go protect the people. He seen the army of the world coming, so he positioned himself for defense, right? Then it says, And after this I beheld, and lo, they which were gathered together to subdue him. So all these armies that's coming, they flying in their fighter jets, and they rolling in their tanks. You know what I'm saying? They walking in their formation with their troops. You know, they coming in all types of ways. They coming, right? And what happened though? It says, and I beheld, and lo, they which were gathered together to subdue him were so afraid. So they afraid. You know, of course they're going to be afraid. You know, they've been watching Hollywood movies all their life. Independence Day. You know, all these other little sci-fi stuff they done concocted. You know. And they like, man, is this really going to work? Is this Will Smith shit really going to work? Huh? Are we really going to be able to take a 1970, 1980 Mac computer and hack these intergalactic spaceships that just came through here? Are we really gonna be able to, you know, all the Hollywood movies gonna be flashing through their mind, right? But then reality gonna sink in, right? And what it says, which were gathered together to subdue him were so afraid. They're gonna be terrified, cause they not gonna. This is an intergalactic being that nobody ever seen, right? This is an intergalactic, interdimensional, all-powerful. I don't even know what other word to say after that, right? He's a bad mamma jamma, right? And they ain't got the answers away. But what does it say? It says, we're so afraid, and yet there's fight. And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held a sword, nor an instrument of war. So, you know, Christ was just standing there. He didn't have no weapons, no nothing. You know, he's being an unarmed black man right now. That's what Christ is doing, right? He's being an unarmed black man, and the armies of the world is rushing in to attack him, to do all types of harm to him, right? To beat him and mistreat him, to choke him and hold him down and mace him and do whatever they want to do to the man. He's being an unarmed black man right now, because it just told us that, and lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand nor held a sword, nor a instrument of war, right? But only I saw that he sent out his mouth as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks of tempest, right? So, and we're not going to get into it for time's sake, but he basically gave the order to his people to attack. And we is that fire, we is that spark, we is that tempest that came to destroy the incoming army, right? Let's get this real quick though. Isaiah 11:4 says, but with the righteous shall he judge the poor. But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with iniquity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, right? And that's what he's going to do. He's going to smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, because he's going to give that order, you know, that command, right? Then it says, and with the breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked, because he speaks and we listen, because that is our king, right? If our king says do this, God dang it, we gonna do it. And we gonna do it like we ain't never did it before, right? That's what's going down. And it says back over here, but I only saw that he sent out of his mouth as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out the sparks of tempest, right? Real quick, you know, just get a little bit, like I said, I ain't gonna give a whole full breakdown, but just a tiny itty bit real quick, you know, just for those that's in the back, you know, so they won't feel left out, don't know what's going on in the world. So just real quick, just really quick. All right. Where that? It is boom, boom, boom. Right here, Isaiah 51 and 20, right? It tells us this. It says, hold up. Why are they doing me like that? Not Isaiah, it is Jeremiah. My bad, Jeremiah 51 and 20, right? So just real quick for those in the back, that's coming in late, don't understand, right? It says this. Let's start at 19 for the people, right? It says this. It says the portion of Jacob is not like them, right? Because we're not like them, right? The Most High God has separated us and made us cool, made us great, right? Made us the coldest of the coldest, right? Because the portion of Jacob is definitely not like them. Because it tells us right here, Deuteronomy 7 and 6, for thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself. Talking to the Israelites. It says, above all people that are on the face of the earth. Right? So, the portion of Jacob is not like them. For he is the former of all things. Because like we read, Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning that follows. And it says, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance. The Lord of hosts is his name. Verse 20. Thou art my battle axe and weapons of war. That's who the Israelite says to the Most High God. His people are my battle axe and weapons of war. With thee I will break in pieces the nations. With thee I will destroy kingdoms. And with thee I will break in pieces horses and his rider, and with thee I will break in pieces the chariot and his rider, and with thee I will break in pieces men and women, and with thee I will break in pieces old and young, and with thee I will break in pieces young man and maid. I will also break in pieces with thee shepherd and his flock, and with thee I will break in pieces husband and his yoke of ox, and with thee I will break in pieces captains and rulers, and with thee I will render unto Babylon. Who? Ricky, what? Nigga, who? Chicka, what? I will render unto Babylon and all the inhabitants of Chaldea all their evil that they have done in Zion in your sight, said Yahweh. Right? So, like I said, we ain't got to give a whole fully breakdown of him giving that commandment, but you see that the Israelites is the Most High God weapons of war when they are keeping the commandments and righteous, the baddest army on the planet, because we have aerial support, right? Aerial support via what they call those UAPs. We have, not only do we have aerial support, we have support by the way of the Mashiach Yahweh Shai, and under the power of the Most High God Yahweh, because he fights our battles, right? He gets the victory. So that's what goes on, right? So back over here, it says, but only I saw that he sent out his mouth and had a blast of fire out of his lips and a flaming breath out of his tongue. He cast out sparks and tempests, and they were all mixed together, a blast of fire and a flaming breath and a great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight. So all these armies rushing in to come and get the Mashiach Yahweh Shai. But they running up against some bad man. They running up against 144,000 Mike Tysons. They're running up against 144,000 black Supermans. They're running up against 144,000 black Bruce Lees. Right? They're running up against 144,000 black John Wicks. God dang it. That's what they coming up against. Right? They're running up against 144,000 every damn character of the X-Men or Marvel comic you can think of right now. Right? That's what's going on. And what it says, and they were all mixed together with a blast of fire. The flaming breath and great tempest fell upon the violence upon a multitude which were prepared to fight. So all these nations that's rushing in gets destroyed instantly, instantaneously, bamboos, right? Turn into powder, right? Beating and mistreating. And it says the multitude which were prepared to fight and burnt them up every one, so that upon the sudden innumerable multitude nothing was perceived. So imagine you look out and you see nothing but for miles and miles of soldiers and military of all types of sort, right? You just seeing all that, then you're like, dang, that's look like the whole army of the world, right? Like the movie 300, when he's talking about the Persian army, he's talking about how large the Persian army is. And even in secular history, they'll tell you, some of the people will write about how large the Persian army was. They say that the Persian army was so large, they used to drink lakes. They used to drink the ocean as they go, right? Because that's how large they was. So imagine this army, the armies of the world gathering together. Because what did Reagan tell them? Reagan told them a long time ago, what can bring us together if it's an existential crisis from another planet? Can we all work together? So they're going to come together, right? And when they do, it says, the multitude which was prepared to fight and burnt them up, every one, so that the sudden of the innumerable multitude nothing was perceived, but only dust. So imagine, you see that multitude of the whole, basically, picture the armies of the world that's rushing towards your way. Then all of a sudden you blink. Maybe you drop something, maybe you dropped your pen, your phone fell, you picked it up, you bend down to pick it up, and you stand back up, you look up, ain't nothing but dust and smoke. You're like, damn, where'd they go? What happened? Right? Nothing but a pile of dust, a heap of ashes. Like, what happened? Right? It says, a sudden of the innumerable multitude, nothing was perceived, but only dust and the smell of smoke. And when I saw this, I was afraid. So Ezra's vision, seeing this end time battle, this vision, and seeing the Lord's people get down, for what they know, and he's seeing how the Lord's people destroyed the armies of the world very quickly. You're gonna do it very quickly, right? And he's seen it. And even though Ezra is on the good side, on the good guy's side, he said, when I saw this, I was afraid, right? But if you read the book of Ezra, I like Ezra. I mess with Ezra. Ezra was getting visions of end times and stuff, and he's seeing stuff. He like, damn, that's messed up, And he was worried about how he gonna get protected in that day. He was like, dang, this is really jacked up. And he on the good side, right? So imagine how messed up it's gonna be, right? Even our dear brother Ezra was afraid. And this is something to benefit him, right? Benefit us. So it says, after I saw the same man came down from the mountain and called unto him another peaceable multitude. So then, he gathered the people back, after the fighting men of Israel, the 144,000, they went out and handled business, right? They got down how they get down, right? You can read about it in Zechariah 12 and 8, right? So they got down how they got down, right? And it says, so then, and where there came much people unto him, whereof some were glad and some were sorry, and some of them were bound. So now, again, you got to understand prophecy, baby. Just get this really quick. Just understand it. Just walk it slow. Can we? It says, and there came much people unto him. So this is after all the dust settled, Everybody know their role and shut their mouth, right? Because we don't kick everybody's ass real quick, right? So then it says, and there came much people unto him, whereof some were glad, because, they're going to be like, oh, thank you, Jesus. Oh, yes, we're saved. No more ding dong, the witch is dead, right? Everybody going to be glad. You're going to have the glad ones, right? Then it says, some were sorry. Some was like, oh, damn, he's black. Oh, man. Oh, jeez. Dang, I didn't know them Israelite niggas was right. God dang it. For reals. Oh, man. Right? They're going to be sorry. Shame is going to cover them, as the Bible says. And it says, some were sorry. Some of them were bound. Because some of them going to be locked up. Don't let me out. Locked up. Because we're going to take the survivors of these nations and we're going to put them in chains. The same way they took the Lord's people and put them in chains. Whether you like it, believe it, understand it or not. Isaiah chapter 14. Right? So, then what does it say? And it says, and some were bound, and others were brought of them that were offered. And then was I through the great fear, and I awakened and said. So then it says, and some were brought that was great offer, and I believe too that's speaking of our scattered Israelites that's scattered to these far out nations and far out islands, remote islands that never had the chance to hear about, the Most High God, because maybe, they, split, during the time of Moses, or maybe, maybe during Salmonessa or whatever, but they got scattered to all these different other far out places. And so, so I think that could be talking about that. I'm not sure. That part. See, I can be honest when I ain't sure about stuff, the Christian church to say stuff. But, I can let you know if I'm not quite sure on that part, but I believe that's what that's speaking to right there. And it says, where that, boom, boom, boom. And it says, yeah, okay, and brought them that were offered, because the only reason why, because in Isaiah it speaks about those that were offered, and those are speaking to our scattered Israelites that scattered through far out places of the world. So, anywho, then it says, and then I was sick through great fear, and I awakened and said. So, you had this vision, and it made them sick, made them didn't feel so well, which is another cut to those false people that be talking about, oh, God talked to me, and I spoke to God. Because oftentimes when you read this book, whenever a prophet have an encounter with the Most High God, he usually don't feel too well afterwards, right? And like we see right here, I sick, though it said I sick, and then I was, I'm reading it wrong, it says, then I was sick through great fear, and I awakened and said, and then it says, and I awakened and said, thou hast showed thy servant these wonders from the beginning, and has counted me worthy that thou shouldest receive my prayer. Right? So, so you're showing Ezra's, the secrets of the end and stuff like that, and how things was going to go. Right? And because Ezra, you read the story, Ezra was praying and fasting so because he wanted the answers, he was being diligent, right? Let's get John 9:31 real quick, right? Because Ezra says that the Lord heard his prayers, and we all want our prayers to be heard by the Most High God, right? Because church would teach you that all you got to do is pray and say in Jesus' name, right? That's what it teaches. Okay, that's half right. But the Bible says this. This is John 9:31. Now you know that God hear not sinners, right? So, but our dear brother Ezra said, thou hast showed thy servant these wonders from the beginning, and hast counted me worthy that thou should receive my prayer. So he received Ezra's prayer. Why? Because he's not a sinner. Because we can read over here, for now we know that God hear not sinners. So a lot of times people pray for stuff and they wonder why their prayer is not being answered, because God hear not sinners. But if any man be a worshiper of God and do his will, him he heareth. Right? So Ezra was a man that kept the commandments of God. That's why his prayers got answered. Right? And we want our prayers to be answered, so we keep the commandments of the Most High God. So back over here, it says, Show me now yet the interpretation of this dream. For as I can conceive in my understanding, woe unto them that shall be left in those days, and much more woe unto them that are not left behind. For they that are not left were in heaviness. So, and, this not left is, it can be taken, it's speaking of, being unalive and taken, but then also spiritually being taken into false philosophies and ideologies and taken away from, the path of the Most High God. So it says, boom, 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 and for they that were not left were in heaviness, now understanding I the things that are laid upon the latter days, what shall happen to them and those that are left behind. So, and it says, therefore they come unto a great peril and many necessities, like as these dreams declare. Yet as it is easier for him that is danger to come into these things than to pass away as a cloud out of the world and not see the things that happen in the past days, right? So these things is going to happen, and so you have to prepare yourself and spiritually and keep the faith, right? So you don't get weary when you see all this, hell stuff happening and, stuff that you never experienced before, and pray that you have the strength to go through these things, right? And it says, therefore they come unto great peril and many necessities, like as the dreams declare. And yet as it is easy for him that is in danger to come into these things, that to pass away as a cloud out of the world and not to see the things that is happening to the last days. And things, and he answered me and said, the interpretation of the vision shall I show thee, and I will open unto thee the things that thou hast required. Because Ezra want to know what's going to happen to the people that's left behind, right? The Lord's people. And it says, whereas thou hast spoken to them that has left behind, this is the interpretation. He that shall endure the peril, shall endure the peril in that time have kept himself. He that fallen into danger are such as have works in faith towards the Almighty. And now this thereof, it says, it says, now this thereof that they which be left behind are more blessed than they that be dead. So, and like going to the whole rapture theory thing, how people say, like, could they use that verse to be two in the field and one shall be taken and all that stuff, or you're gonna look and be people taken on your left or the right? I forgot how the exact verse go, but that the verses they use for the whole rapture theory. But that can't be true if we're reading that those that's going to be left behind that did not die through the violence that's going to take place on this earth, they are the blessed, right? And it says this, it says, and he that endured the peril that that time he should that keep himself, he that be fallen in danger as are such as works and faith towards Almighty. So meaning, you keeping the faith, although you going through hard stuff, you keeping the faith, you're gonna, be brought through those perils. And it says, know this thereof, that the day which be left behind are more blessed than they that be dead. This is the meaning of the vision, whereas thou sawest a man coming from the midst of the sea, the same as whom Yahweh the highest have kept in great season. That's, the Mashiach Yahweh Shai, who the world called Jesus Christ. And it says, which by his own self shall deliver his creature, and he shall order them that are left behind. Because we follow the Mashiach Yahweh Shai, the King, right? And whereas thou sawest out of his mouth where it came out as the blast of wind and fire and storm, and that he held neither sword nor any instrument of war, but that the rushing in of him that destroyed the whole multitude that came to subdue him. This is the interpretation, right? And it says, behold, so they're going to give an interpretation, tell them what's going on, right? And because, again, those people that are left, that's the chosen. That's the chosen and the few, right? Because like we read in Zechariah, the nation had to go through the fire, and 2/3 will be cut off, right? And then it says, behold, the days cometh when the Most High will begin to deliver them that are on the earth, right? So he's going to come to deliver his people by sending his son, the Mashiach Yahweh Shai, with the millions, right? And it says, and he shall come to astonishment of them that dwell on the earth, and one shall undertake to fight against another, in one city against another, in one place against another, one people against another, and one realm against another. So that's civil war, race war, world war, right? And regional war. And it says, and that's all going on. And it says, and at that time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and a sign shall happen which I showed thee before, and then shall my son be declared, who thou sawest as a man ascended. So again, so the signs is happening, whether it's prophetic signs that we see that are taking place on a global scale, or if it's signs in the heavens, with all these blood moons that's taking place, all these eclipses that took place over the last several months and so forth, right? So a lot of signs being showed, right, throughout the stars in the heavens, and also on a political and global scale as well, right? It says, and when all the people hear his voice, every man shall in their own land leave their battle they have one against another. So again, like we were saying earlier, when Ronald Reagan was talking about in that press conference he did, like about how their phony call world peace, he was like, yeah, if we get basically an alien invasion, that should bring the whole world together, right? And that's what's going to happen, because it says, and when all the people heard his voice, every man should leave their own land and leave the battle. So, again, because World War III is going to be going on during this time, because Christ is going to come back towards the middle end of World War III, right? And as these nations is busy fighting each other, then here come this black man along with his posse, and then the armies of the world, the nations of the world, is gonna be like, hold on, what the heck is that? Just hold on, just put this fight on pause for a minute, time out. You know what I'm saying? I quit. Just go fight this guy real quick. Just go see what this is all about, right? So, and that's what's going to happen. Because all the armies of the world is going to be convinced by whoever's running this country. I'm going for the third time, 3 times at a time, 3 times at a time. So the beast and the false prophet is going to trick these nations into fighting against the Mashiach, the Hawashah, right? And it says, boom, boom, boom. It says, and when the people hear his voice, every man shall in his own land shall lead the battle they have one against another. And an innumerable multitude shall be gathered together as though thou sawest them willing to come and to overcome him by fighting. But he shall stand upon the top of the mountain, the top of the Mount Zion, and Zion shall come and shall be showed to all men, being prepared and built like as thou sawest in the hill graven without hands. So mighty army, unscathed, unmovable. Like we read about in Daniel, that rock, that stone that was cut out without hands that came and smote the statue. Right? That's what's going on here. Right? And it says, and this is my son, and this is my son shall rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations. So they're going to come with their tanks, all their little artillery, their technology and all that stuff, whatever they got, their fighter jets, their submarines, whatever. But what it say? My son shall rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations, which for their wicked life are fallen into tempest, right? So their weapons is going to be non-effective in that day. It's not going to work. Then it says, and they shall lay before them their evil thoughts and they torment wherewith they shall begin to be tormented with, which are like unto flames, and he shall destroy them without labor, but by the law which is unto fire, right? Because again, Deuteronomy 18:18 tell us he should raise up one like unto Moses, whatever he tell us, he command us, do it. And we're going to do it. And we just read it in Jeremiah 51. We are the battle axes of the Most High God. And it says, and whereas thou sawest that he has gathered another peaceable multitude unto himself, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Osea the king. So during the time of Hosea, the Babylonian king Salmanasseh came and conquered Israel and took them into slavery. The northern kingdom got taken into slavery and scattered throughout the world first, right? That's why by the time you get to the New Testament, you hear stuff about Gentiles and the scattered Israelites and so forth. That's what it's talking about, right? And it says, these are the 10 tribes which were scattered and carried away prisoner out of their own land in the time of Osea, the king who Salmanasseh, the king of Assyria, led away captive and carried them over the waters. So he carried them over the water. So not only did he take us into Babylon and Assyria, then he scattered us throughout Europe, throughout Europe and other coasts and other provinces that he had control over, right? So now, and that happened, way back in, just get this right here, right? 2 Kings, real quick. 2 Kings 17. and 3. So 2 Kings 17 and 3 says this, right? So it says, against him came Salmanasseh, the king of Assyria, and Hosea became his servant and gave him presents. So he put the northern kingdom under subjugation, and made them pay tribute, because that's what conquering nations do. They put other nations into servitude and make them pay taxes or tribute. Then it says, and he became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hosea, for he had sent a messenger to the king of Egypt. Because Hosea was like, I'm not going out like no punk, right? Forget Salmanezar. I ain't paying him nothing. I'm tired of who this guy think he is. I'm not paying the 5, right? I ain't paying the 5. That's what he told him. And he said, for he had sent messengers to the king of Egypt, and brought no presents to the king of Assyria, and he had done year by as he had done year by year. Therefore, the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. So Hosea stopped paying the king of Assyria money. He started, cozying up with Egypt because he wanted to try to get Egypt to get his back, right? So Salmanezar wasn't cool with that. So he invaded the land. And what it says, and bound him in prison. So he took our poor king, Hosea, and put him in prison because he didn't want to pay him taxes. Just like how Donald J. Trump went to Venezuela, and they kidnapped the president and locked him up, right? So then it says, and then the king of Assyria came up throughout the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. So then he's like, all right, that's what y'all want. So he went up to the land and took it under siege for 3 years, took all the people out, right? He didn't come into Jerusalem because he knew better. You read the biblical account on that, right? So our people was taken away, right? So back over here. It says, but they took counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country. So now, getting into secular history with this, the Greeks came into power. So the Greeks came into power. They started warring with the Assyrians and all that stuff. And then because they were fighting, and we like, well, shit, they fighting each other. The government is falling. These Persian dudes, they don't know what they're doing. You know what? Let's get up out of here. We out of here, right? So they took the opportunity to flee, just like during the Civil War in America, when the North and the South was fighting. I think it's 1.3 million or so fled from the South to the North, right? So same thing. Our ancestors had the same idea why these people were fighting. Just get up out of here, right? So they took the opportunity of the nation at war and collapsing, and they left, right? And it's going to be the same way here in America. When America fully get up in it, we're going to leave because Christ is coming back with the millions, right? So then it says, but they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. So they got together and said, hey, let's go and leave this place and go to a further country where never mankind dwelt. And that's what we call it on this side of the world, because they knew about Africa, they knew about Asia, they knew about, the what we know as the Middle East, right? So they was very familiar with that. But this place, what they call Ashtaroth, right? Some people call it Turtle Island, right? This place, never mankind dwelt. Even history will tell you that this place was like a big giant forest. There's trees everywhere, from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. Trees, right? So it says, so they took counsel amongst themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. So they're like, look, man, we need to separate from these people so we can try to, live, the way we want to live, follow our God the way we want to follow our God and keep the culture, right? And it says, which they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land, and they enter into the Euphrates by the narrow passage. So then they enter into the Euphrates River, right? Then I wish I can pan the camera around, but I can show you this map I'm looking at. But they enter into the Euphrates River, right? So as they enter into the Euphrates, right? Let me see real quick. So they travel down the Euphrates. Then they enter into, the Gulf, right? The Persian Gulf. Then as they enter into the Persian Gulf, then they enter into the Arabian Sea, which brought them and connect them, to the rest of the oceans and took them around the tip of Africa and brought them into what we know here today, right? But so it says this. It says, and they enter into the Euphrates by the narrow passage by the river. For the Most High showed signs for them and held still the waters. And held still the flood. So the flood is the waters. So now he shows signs, because if you're familiar with our Northern Kingdom brothers, they good at reading the stars, astrology and stuff like that. The Incas, I think Inca means timekeeper, right? So they always, was familiar with time and reading the stars and stuff like that. So they used the stars to navigate, to make their way over to this part of the land. And they were familiar with this part of the land because, number one, Egypt traveled over here because the mummies, historians would tell you, archaeologists would tell you that a lot of the mummies had cocaine in their system. And cocaine is only found on this side of the world. So Egypt was traveling over here. Solomon had his tin and his copper mines over here that he had his navy, and they used to come and travel. The Bible tells you that, when Solomon used to send out his navy, to go get these resources, it would take up to a year and a half. And back then, shipping, and commercial shipping, or whatever you want to call it, traveling in those days took about a year and a half. Because they didn't have motorized, boats now. They didn't have, like, the technology, the navigation system that they have now for shipping, right? So it took about a year and a half to travel from that side of the world to this side of the world, right? Even with Christopher Columbus, what did it say? It took a 3-year journey from Spain, right? Using, those conventional type of boats during that time, right? So, what did it say? Hell stood the flood. So now, if you understand, especially you go down the bottom of Africa, once you get down towards the bottom of Africa, because you pass into the Euphrates, so you have warm water, right? You have warm water, you have a different type of current that comes with warm water. Then as you get to the bottom tip of Africa, you're kind of some miles away from Antarctica. Now you're in between warm water and cold water. That creates rough water, choppy water, because the two currents are converging and they're not, mashing, so they're competing. So that creates choppy water. So, a lot of, people that do nautical, navigation throughout the little stuff, they'll tell you that part of the world, water is very rough over there, right? But the Bible tells us this, and held still the flood till they pass over. So God kept the water still for them as they went around the bottom part of the African continent where the rough waters are. It says, held still the waters, right? And it says, until they were passed over. For through the country were great way of, and through that country there was a great way, namely of a year and a half. So that's how long it took them to get over here, a year and a half. And of course, you know, it wasn't like just one ship, you know, because it was, we talk about a multitudes of people, 10 tribes of people that were scattered, and they decided to come and flee. So they had to build ships and stuff and travel. So, you know, the whole logistics of the thing. So it took some time. But the travel, what it say? It says, all right, boom, boom, boom. Says, dun, dun, dun. Says, for through that country there was a great way to go, namely a year and a half, in the same region called Asheroth. So that's what this place, America, was called biblically, Asheroth. And when you look up Asheroth in the Jewish Bible Dictionary, in the Bible Dictionary, Zondervan Bible Dictionary, it tell you that Asheroth is America, right? So, and it says, in the same region is called Asheroth. Then dwelt they until the latter times. So that's where we at right now to this day. Our Native American, Hispanic, Caribbean, South American brothers and sisters is part of the 12 tribes of Israel, because they came over here, and like the Bible just told us, it says, and then dwelt they there until the latter time. And now when they shall begin to come, you know, because now Christ is back and he's gathering the people, you know, to come back to the land. It says, now when they begin to come, the highest shall say to the springs of the stream again, that they may go through. Therefore sawest thou the multitude of peace. So the great multitude of people that Ezra was seeing that Christ is protecting, that's all of Israel, all 12 tribes, even our scattered, you know, brothers, right? And it says, boom, boom, boom. But those that be left behind of thy people are they that found within my border. But those that be left behind of thy people are they that be found within my border. Now when he had destroyed the multitude of nations that are gathered together, he shall defend his people that remain. So the people that the Most High God had called as Israelites, the ones that he is gathering, Christ is going to defend them, right? And it says, and then he shall show them great wonders, right? Because again, you know, going to bless the people of Israel, and they're going to be the hegemony, right? Then he's going to show them great wonders. Then said I, lo, the Lord bears rule. Show me this. Where have I seen man come from the midst of the sea? And he said unto me, like as thou can neither seek out nor know the things that are in the deep of the sea, even can no man upon the earth see my son, or those that be with him, but in the daytime. This is the interpretation of the dream that thou sawest, and whereby thou was only art here lightened, right? For thou hast forsaken thy own way, and applied thy diligence unto my law, and sought it, right? So, you know, so you're like, man, I'm going to show you what's going on, because, you know, you have, you know, forsaken your own way, you're keeping the law. says, thy life hast thou ordered in wisdom, and has called understanding in thy mother. And therefore I have showed thee the treasures of the highest, and after other 3 days I will speak the other things unto thee, and declare unto thee mighty and wonderful things. Then I went forth into the field, giving praise and thanks greatly unto the Most High, because of his wonders, and he did in time, because of his wonders which he did in time, and because he governed the same, in which things is fall in their season, and there I sat 3 days. Right, so he waited 3 more days to see what's going on, right? Because he wanted to get more knowledge of the end and the visions, right? What's going on? Let's jump to 15 real quick. Let's jump up to Ezra 15, and it says, behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy which I have put in the mouth, said the Lord, and cause them to be written in the papers, for they are fulfilled, for they are faithful and true. Right? So it says, like, hey, write this stuff down what I'm about to say. They are faithful and true. Kind of like in Habakkuk, where it says, write it on the tablet, make it plain and clear for the people can see it, right? So it says, fear not the imaginations against thee, let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that seek against thee. So we shouldn't fear the wickedness and the evils that's coming to this place, and that we may go through, right? It says, for all the unfaithful should die in their unfaithfulness. So we have to be faithful, because it says all the unfaithful will die in their unfaithfulness. If you walking around thinking, oh my God, we're gonna die, everybody gonna die, we gonna die, then yeah, you're probably right. Like that saying say, the person that say they can and can't is both right. So think about that. A person that say they can and can't is both right. So don't be that guy, oh, we gonna die, running around like a chicken with his head cut off, right? Because the Bible tells us, for all the unfaithful should die in their unfaithfulness. Behold, said the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. For wickedness have exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. Right? So God has seen all the wickedness of these people and the things that they have done, and he's fed up with it, and he's now finally coming to judge them for everything. It says, therefore said the Lord, behold, my tongue, it says, I will hold my tongue no more, touching the wickedness which they profanely commit, neither will I suffer them in those things which they wickedly exercise themselves. Behold, the innocent and the righteous blood cry out to me, and the souls of the just complain continually. Right? So the Most High God is like, look, I'm sick of you people unaliving the innocent. I gotta listen, because the Lord holds court, whether you understand it, believe it or not. You go to court, you got the plaintiff and the defendant, right? So these people that's getting unjustly murdered, they sitting in court, they complaining, they petitioning, right? And God ain't cool with that, because they like, yo, what you gonna do about it, right? It's a Wisdom of Solomon 2:1. It says, for the ungodly said, reasoning with themselves, but not right. Our life is short and tenuous, and in the death of a man there is no remedy. Neither was there any man who have returned from the grave, right? So the ungodly, they don't think about, you know, the consequences of God. They don't think about, you know, if they do this or do that, you know, how it's going to affect anything, right? You know, that's not in their thought process at all, because it says, I will hold, that's why God is saying this, I will hold my tongue no more touching the wickedness, which they profanely commit, neither will I suffer them in those things which they wickedly exercise themselves, right? Because again, it says, for the ungodly said, reasoning with themselves, meaning the things they come up with, because they just, you know, they have their philosophers and their, you know, their theologians and other things, and their secular professors and stuff. They think about, well, you know, if God, you know, if I was God, I would have designed the human body this way. If I was God, this would be this. Well, if God was so intelligent, then he would have did this. You know, well, maybe this and that. These are the same people that can't, you know, figure out the human brain, haven't mapped the bottom of the ocean yet, you know, can't figure out all the, you know, how the eyeball work, but yet they think they know more than God. Because it says, for the ungodly said, reasoning with themselves, meaning thinking and philosophizing to themselves. Our life is short and tedious and tenacious, and death of a man there's no remedy. Neither was there any man no have a return from the grave. So, you know, they're just thinking like, look, live fast, die young. You know what I'm saying? That's their creed. Live fast, die young, right? And, you know, because there's nothing after here, you know, so that's why they just say, we're going to rob, steal, and kill until it ain't nothing else to do, right? And it says, neither will I suffer them in those things which they wickedly exercise themselves. Behold, the innocent and the righteous blood cried unto me, and their souls of the just complain continually. And therefore said Yahweh, I will surely avenge them, because God is going to avenge the death of the innocent, the death of his people, right? Because he's a God of vengeance, a God of justice. And it says, I will surely avenge them and receive unto me all the innocent blood from among them. So you're going to take all the innocent from among them, because we are the innocent, and we need to be taken from these vicious, untamed, uncivilized monsters, right? For they further corrupt us as a people, right? You see what they got us doing already. You see our women, how they shaking ass and dressing half naked, and our men walking around with purses and broken wrists, right? So we have to remove the innocent, right? Because we are the innocent. Because we are the Lord's people. And it says, where that, boom, boom, boom. It says, I will surely avenge them and receive them unto me all the innocent blood from among them. Behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. Right? That's what we are. We are led like as flock to the slaughter. Because again, we're like sheep. You know, we follow whatever is popular, whatever's cool, whatever sounds fancy, right? Whatever glitters and shine. You know, we with it, right? You know, because we love fantasies, we love good lies, stuff that make us feel good, versus doing what the Most High God told us to do. Then we won't be in none of this trouble, right? My people are led as a flock to the slaughter, because the leaders that we look up to, the people that we look up to for guidance, is corrupting us and leading us astray and giving us these false ideologies and understanding of the world, and then we try to live it out, and we don't realize how detriment it is to ourselves, to our family, and to our community. We don't make that connection, right? That what we're taught in a society, how we should be as a people, is detrimental to how the Lord wants us to be as a people. And that's why we go through what we go through collectively as a people, right? We don't think that far. And it says, where is that? Boom, boom, boom. It says, behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I would not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt. So he's like, man, I gotta get y'all out, get y'all out of there. You know how you have your kid in a bad school? Your kid was a good kid, then you take him to this school in a rough neighborhood, and all of a sudden the kids start gang banging, start smoking with cigarettes, right? And you're like, I gotta get you up out of this environment, because I don't know where you're picking this stuff up from, but I gotta get you up out of here. That's how the Most High God feel about his people. He gotta get us up out this environment, and he's gonna send his son to do so, right? And it says, behold, my people are led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt. He's like, man, I can't, man, we're gonna find a different place to hang out at, because I don't like what they do in here. So come on, kids, let's go, right? Let's find a different place, right? And I would bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite the Egyptian with plagues. Because when the Most High took us out of Egypt the first time, he took us out of there with 10 plagues, right? But this time he's going to take us out of this place with 7 plagues. You can read about that in Revelation, right? And it says, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and I will destroy all the land thereof. Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and the punishment that God shall bring upon it, right? And again, we all know that America is spiritually Egypt. You read about that in Revelation 11, right? So then it says, and they that till the ground shall mourn, for the sea shall fall through the blasting, and the hell and the fearful consultation, right? So meaning, like, the market crashed, the farming industry is over with, food industry, everything is going to be just taken, because it's going to be turmoil. Everything is going to just cease to be how it's supposed to be, right? It says, for the sword and their destruction draw nigh, and one people should stand up and fight against another, right? So again, because when famine is going on, food shortage, gas prices is high, a lot of stuff is going on, that's going to make, what it say? It says, the sword of their destruction draw nigh. One people should stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hand. Meaning, people are going to be going to war, fighting over resources, fighting over, whatever is going down, right? And it says, for there shall be sedition among men, invading one another. So there's going to be sedition among men, invading one another. People are going to be breaking into each other's houses. That person you was cool with, and they done told you their little secret, stash spot, and where they got a little extra money or extra this or that, you're gonna break into that. You're gonna kick in the door, waving a fofo, and you're gonna rob that person, right? Because there should be sedition among men, right? Invading one another, and they should not regard their kings nor princes. So they're not gonna respect no authority figures in our day. The leaders are not gonna be able to come on TV and say, "Hey, settle down, everybody. Go back to your homes. Remain calm. We're putting in a curfew in effect." Everybody gonna be like, "F that." We ain't going, because they should not regard their kings nor princes. So, civil unrest is coming. Overthrowing the government is coming, right? These people go around the whole world toppling governments with their special ninjas they use. And you cannot expect to do so evil and don't think it's going to come back to you. You thought January 6th was something, right? That was just a precursor. That was light. Because it tells us they should not regard their kings nor princes. And in their course of their actions should stand in their power. Meaning they're going to do what the hell they want to do in that day. Ain't nobody going to stop them. Ain't no 911 call. You can... Ain't no 911. Ain't no, I'm going to call 911. You're going to hear a busy tone that day. Right? You're going to hear boo, boo, boo. The number you call is out of service. You can be like, what the hell? This is 911. What do you mean it's out of service? Right? Because they should not regard their kings nor princes. In the course of their actions should stand in their hands. Meaning, whatever it's going to be their rules. Right? Mad Max style. Right? Is going down. Police is not going to be answering their phones. Because they're going to be home protecting their family from your crazy ass. Right? That's what's going to be going down. Right? And it says, a man should desire to go in the city and should not be able. So martial law is going to be going down. You know, military presence is going to be on the streets. Why do you think the Israelis is teaming up with the American government? Because we know that studies have proven that the U.S. Armed Forces have reservations on pointing the barrel of their gun at U.S. citizens. They don't feel right doing that. You know, they don't feel right policing American citizens because, number one, they're not trained to do that. They're trained to protect American citizens. So they have to bring in the Israelis. You know, they have to merge this army together like they said they were going to do. Because when you look at, you know, these TikTok videos and Instagram videos that have been coming out over the last several years, they have no reservations on hurting people. Have no reservations on the young or the old. They don't think twice about it. Right? So, that's what we got going on over here. What it say? It says, a man should desire to go in the city and should not be able. For because their pride, the city shall be troubled. I mean, it's going to be city on city, you know, fighting, you know, everybody fighting everybody. The houses shall be destroyed and men shall be afraid, right? People are going to be afraid that day, especially if you ain't got the proper things to protect yourself. You're going to be afraid, right? And it says, a man should have no pity upon his neighbor. So, you know, you're going to be your neighbor that you've been cool with for several years, speaking to. He be out in the front yard washing his car every weekend, right? Pretty soon in that day, that guy that you see washing his car in the weekend, he going to be creeping through your window, right? He going to be trying to see what you got, right? Or vice versa. You might be looking at that nice car he be washing every weekend and be like, well, I know he got something. Yeah, he must got something, right? And then it says, a man should have no pity upon his neighbor. So, it's going to be all out chaos. That's why the Most High God says, gather yourselves together, O nation not desired. That's why God is calling the Israelites to come back and gather themselves together. Don't have this divide, this split that we have amongst ourselves, right? Because in this day, in that day, we're going to need each other because the stuff we reading is crazy. If you want to be real, it's crazy, right? Ain't nobody got time for that, right? Ain't nobody got time for that, really though, truly though, right? This is crazy. That's why it's important to do what the Most High God says. I'm laughing, but I'm dead serious. If you know, you know. This is crazy, man. This is crazy, right? But it says, A man should have no pity on his neighbor, but should destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of lack of bread. Because people gonna be hungry. People do strange things for food, right? I done heard stories of people doing strange things for a cigarette, for a piece of crack rock, right? As the old folks say, that crack rock, right? People do strange things. But imagine when your stomach is touching your back and you got kids to feed. What you gonna do? It says, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of lack of bread. And for a great tribulation, behold, said God, I will call together all the kings of the earth to reverence me. Right? So now this ain't no, oh yeah, that's all the presidents and leaders, prime ministers of the world just come together. We're going to have a global prayer. Just come together, everybody touch and agree. Right? Just touch and agree and just, pray that all, that's not what he's talking about here. He's talking about he's going to whoop their ass so bad that they have no other choice but to honor the Most High God. Right? Have you ever got your butt kicked so bad you can't say nothing? But they did that. Like, yeah, they did that. Shit, there's nothing I can do. Shit. I mean, dang. They got it. You know what I'm saying? You can't even say, well, the better man won. Just, they got it. You know what I'm saying? Or, they was better than me that day. You can't even say that. You just say, they got it. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing I can do about it. They got it. Right? Don't be like that. And it says, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of lack of bread, for great tribulation. Behold, God will call together all the kings of the earth to reverence me. And again, it's not no, hey, just pray together, brothers. Just come on, let's pray. Which are from the rising of the sun and from the south, from the east, from Lebakas, to turn themselves one against another. So that's that valley of Jehoshaphat, that valley of decisions that we read about in the book of Joel. Armageddon, in case you don't know, where God is bringing all the armies together slowly but surely. That's why we're seeing them all slowly getting themselves into the Middle East over there with Iran. We see Iran slowly branching off into Europe, and getting into that crisis with Ukraine and Russia. So we're seeing them how they all getting intertwined together. The Most High God is like a master weaver, weaving all these conflicts to one big conflict, right? And it says this. It says, to turn themselves one against another and to repay the things that they have done to them, right? Like as they did yet this day to my chosen. Because again, it ain't, when he says to reverence me, it ain't like, oh, just go pray to God because God is so cool. No. Reverence meaning he's going to destroy them so bad that you have no other choice but to say, how they say in karate or in, competition of fighting, mate. Meaning I quit. Uncle. That's how bad they're going to get beaten. Till they throw the white flag and wave it. Right? That's what's going on there. Because these people are proud. You got to understand, these people are prideful bastards. Right? Just see the Hollywood movies. They win at the end all the time against these existential invasions. You know what I'm saying? And like that because in their point of view, their point of reference, that's what they're probably going to be looking at it as. But we know what it is. Right? So, it says this. It says, but like as they do yet this day to my chosen. So as they have done to his chosen, whatever atrocities, treatment, whatever way they have done to us over the annals of time, what did God say? Like as yet they do this day to my chosen, so will I do also in recompense in their bosom. So God says he's going to pay them back. Whatever they did to his chosen, he's going to do it right back to them. And it says, thus saith the Lord God, My right hand shall not spare the sinner, and my sword shall not cease over them that shed innocent blood on the earth. Right? He's going to get with them. Fire is come forth from his wrath, and hath consumed the foundations of the earth, and the sinners like the straw like is kindled. Right? So he's on that with them. Woe to them that sin and keep not my commandments. Right? And that's, for our people too, because, our people think that you don't have to keep the commandments, just believe in Christ, right? But this is the final battle. God's talking about destroying the beast, Satan, right? And in that, he's saying, woe to them that sin and keep not my commandments, said Yahweh. So you better start trying to learn these commandments and keep them, because he's lumping you up into this final battle of him destroying Israel's ultimate enemy, right? So you might want to do some commandments around here, right? So then it says, boom, 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 it says, I will not spare them. Go your way, ye children, from the power, defile not my sanctuary, right? For Yahweh know all them that sin against him, and therefore deliver them unto death and destruction. So he got a special plan for them, right? It says, now for the plagues come upon the whole earth, and ye shall remain in them. For God said, I shall not deliver you, because ye have sinned against him. Behold, the horrible vision and the appearance thereof from the east, where the nations of the dragon of Arabia shall come out of many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as a wind upon the earth. So the Iranians and their other little Islamic counterparts is going to finally get the lead out their butt and help out their Iranian brothers and get this thing really fully cracking, right? As we see, is it Yemen or the other guys, they done shut down the Red Sea, right? I don't know if they open that up or not, because, they keep opening and closing everything. Side note real quick. I gotta do this, gotta say this, because, I gotta admire good ingenuity and genius when I see it, right? And good planning. You would have thought that these people was one of Larry finest. You know what I'm saying? Proper prevention prevent poor performance. What are these guys doing? Like, these guys been planning this thing for about no less than 25 years total. 25, 27 years total. No less than that. But a good 45 years, they've been putting this thing into play. Right? This is crazy. The Iranians. These guys is like, I don't know, it's like they got like a lever, a switch. Cause I'm thinking like, okay, they got underground mines, they got their little drones and stuff that they're using to patrol. Like, these guys are shutting down the whole world, right? With these drones. It's crazy. And it's like, it's amazing to think about it, really, like, side effects and being affected aside. Like, it's amazing to think that these guys, their ingenuity, their perseverance is holding it down with drones from Tom Thumb, right? And arts and crafts, right? But like it says up here, it says, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out of many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried in the wind upon the earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Right? So, these waking up, and a lot of these Arab nations, they gonna get more into it, some of those Uncle Tom Arab nations, like the GCC, messing with the ops, and that's why Iran is getting down on them. But, how it go. Then it says, and also the Arameans raging with wrath, should go forth as a wild boar in the wood, and with great power should they come join the battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. So again, to Assyrians is another, also used to as a metaphor or idiom for nation of power. It's not always necessarily talking about the actual people of Assyria. Sometimes it's just used as a person of authority or a nation of authority. And it says, and then shall the dragons have the upper hand, remembering their nature. So these Ishmaelites, who we know as the Arabs, they're going to start remembering their nature. And what is their nature? The Bible tells us who the Ishmaelites are. The Ishmaelites are a wild man, a man of the field. He's going to be wild, and his hand is going to be on all of his enemies. What did it say? Let's get it real quick. Where my thingy at? Let's see. Hold on. Hold up. I'm going to have to do it like this and like that. And okay, hold on 1 second. Hold up, I'm gonna find it. Let me find it 1 second. Hold up. Ishmael. Let's see, boom. Let's see, where that? Let me see, I think this is what I'm looking for, right? Yeah. Hold on, no. Might be after that. Hold on. Hold up. find it. Hold on. And there you go. Genesis 16 and 12. My bad. So he's gonna remember his nature, like it said. My bad. So it go right back to it. It says, and then shall the dragon have the upper hand, remembering his nature. What is his nature? Genesis 16 and 12 tell us this. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man. Right? So he's going to remember his nature, and his hand is going to be against every man. And what did they say recently, a few months ago, like, they don't care who he was. If you against, if you're rolling with the ops, they getting you, whether you're a Muslim or not, whether you're Arab or not, they on that with you if you rolling with the ops. So it says, he is a wild man, his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. So then you got all these nations that, they trying to fight, they'll send it up, right? And they're going to send it up because it's going to, like I said, that's going to be the culmination to the Armageddon. That even through history, you had all these, the Arabs had beef with almost damn near every nation on the planet, right? Throughout the annals of time. Because it says, he will be a wild man, his hand against every man, and every man hand against him. Right? So these Ishmaelites, these Arabs, they put them bombs on their chest, right? They put them bombs in the trunk of their car, and they go for what they know, right? Because they are a wild man, right? You have to be a wild man to willing to unalive yourself in everybody else, right? They are a wild man. And it says, and his hand will be against every man, and every man hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of his brethren, right? So they were going to remember their nature. And their nature is to be a wild man, right? And to go and put his hand against everybody else. That's what started the Muslim conquest. When the Arabs came into power during the Muslim religion became a thing, the Eastern version of Catholicism. That's the kind of essentially what we're reading. How them coming into power. They did it before the Arab conquest. The Muslim thing when they went around spreading Islam with the sword, right? So they on that. They gonna remember, like, hey, you remember how we almost made the whole world Muslim by killing everybody? Let's go do that again, right? They gonna be on that, right? Because Donald J. Trump is bringing it out. Pause. We're pulling it out. We're pulling it out in him. You're going to turn him into a wild man. Look at him go. Look at him go. Right? So, they're going to return back to their old nature. Remembering their nature, and if they shall turn themselves, conspiring together in great power to pursue them. These shall be troubled, and to keep silence through their power, and shall flee. And from the land of Assyria shall the enemy besiege them, consume some of them, and their hosts shall fear and dread and strife among their kings. Behold, clouds from the east and from the north unto the south, and they are very horrible to look upon, full of wrath and storm. So these are different armies of the world that's approaching, going into the Middle East, to this valley of decisions, right? It says, boom, boom, boom. And they shall smite one another, and they shall smite down a great multitude of the stars of the earth. So now this is not talking about the stars it's talking about the stars meaning important people, right? Leaders, people like that. When it's talking about stars, just like when you got movies, right? You got actors, then you got movie stars, right? Denzel will be a movie star, Will Smith will be a movie star. You know, now certain people are just actors, right? In basketball, you have basketball players, then you have basketball stars. Michael Jordan is a basketball star. LeBron James is a basketball player. Right? So, it says, boom, 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 where I'm at. I lost my place. Hold on, let me get it back. It says, right down here it says, and they shall smite one another, and they shall smite down a great multitude of stars upon the earth, even their own star, and blood shall fall from the sword unto the belly. So they're gonna take out their own leaders too, like we read earlier. For sedition should be among men, invading one another. They should not regard their kings nor princes. In the course of their actions shall stand in their power. So they're not gonna care about authority in that day at all. Every man for themselves. Right? And what it's saying? Even their own star, and the blood shall be from the sword unto the belly, and the dung of men unto the camel, and these shall be great filthiness, trembling upon the earth, and they that see their wrath shall be afraid, and trembling shall come upon them. Right? So they're gonna be seeing all of this, and they're gonna be afraid. And then shall come great storms from the south and from the north and from other parts of the west. So these other armies coming in, pouring in. And strong winds shall arise from the cast, and shall open it, and clouds which he raise up in wrath, and a star stir up to cause a fear towards the east and towards the west shall be destroyed. So all these armies that's coming, they're gonna be destroyed in this battle royale of these different nations clashing and fighting and unaliving each other. The great and mighty cloud shall be lifted up, full of wrath, and the stars that they made all the earth afraid. So this is America, and it says made all the earth afraid, and them that dwell therein, and they shall pour out every high and intimate place and horrible star, right? Fire and hell and flying swords and many waters, that all fields may be full, and all the rivers with abundance of great waters. Right? So all the nations, like it tells, is going to eventually attack this place. And it says, and they shall break down the cities. And they shall break down the cities. They shall break down the cities and the walls, mountains and hills, trees and wood and grass and the meadows and corn. So when these missiles start to fly, cause like it told us over here, it says fire and hail and flying swords. Those flying swords is talking about missiles, right? Those flying swords and many waters, talking about the armies, right? That all the fields may be filled, and all the rivers with the abundance of the great waters. So the rivers is talking about the nations, and the waters is the armies. So going to be filled with these armies, right? Then it says, and they shall break down the cities, the city walls, mountains and hills and trees, and the wood of the grass and the meadows of their in their corn. Meaning their economy is going to be taken down. The people is going to be taken down. The corn is like the wealth, the money, going to be down, crash, right? And they shall go steadfast into Babylon and make her afraid, right? Because these people are going to see the collapse of this place, and it's going to make them afraid. They're going to go into their little bunkers, the little cubby holes that they done concocted for themselves, right? It says they shall come to her and besiege her. The star and all the wrath shall they pour out upon her, Then shall the dust of the smoke go up into the heavens, and all they that be about her shall bewail her. Right? Because when this country get destroyed, there's gonna be a couple nations that that's in bed with America that's still, getting rich, and they got love for this place, right? Like perhaps like places like Britain and stuff like that might kind of feel sorry for stuff like that, but it tells us like this. Revelation 16:18 says, and there were voices and thunders and lightning, and there was a great earthquake, right? Because it's going to cause seismic activity when these ICBM bombs go off, these hypersonic bombs go off, right? So mighty a earthquake, and so great. And the city was divided into 3 parts, because this place is going to be hit so bad in seismic activity, earthquakes, underground volcanoes, all the stuff you can imagine, happening. And it's going to split this nation, this country, this landscape into 3 parts, right? That's what's creating this lake of fire that we read about in Revelation. And it says, so mighty a earthquake, and so great. And the city was divided into 3 parts, and the city of the nations fell, and great Babylon came into remembrance. So their counterparts, they're going to be destroyed in this coming battle. The ones that's still rolling with this place, right? And it says, the cities of the nations fell, because not only is America going to get hit with these nukes, whoever rolling with America getting popped with these things too. So the cities is going to fall. Then it says, and great Babylon came into remembrance before God, to give unto her the cup of the wine of his wrath. So in that moment, God is going to remember, like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to be checking the earth, like, okay, they're fighting. Okay, that country is doing that. What I'm missing? Oh yeah, that's right. America, boom. Y'all getting into this too, boom. Right? Babylon came into remembrance before God, to give unto her the cup of wine of the fierce wrath. So then it'd be like, yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, World War III going on. Something I'm supposed to be doing. I wrote this down in my notes when World War III happened. Oh yeah, destroy America. So it's gonna remember, like, oh yeah, that's what's supposed to happen. All right, cue scene in action. Because that's how it goes, right? Because it's like a movie for them, right? How you structure this thing. So back over here. Oh, Revelation 18:10 real quick. And it tells us this. Standing far off for the fear of her torment, at last, the great city Babylon, the mighty city, for 1 hour is thy judgment. Right? So these other nations, they're going to see how quickly, very quickly, this place got destroyed. And, and they're going to stand, they're going to be like, whoa, let's back off a little bit. Okay, just reset. Okay, maybe things got a little heated. I think we just kind of knocked America off the map, people. I can't find it on a GPS, right? So just chill out a little bit. Standing far off for the fear of her torment, saying, at last, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for 1 hour is thy judgment come. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her. So all these nations that got rich through the trading and endeavors and other connections they got with this place, they're going to be weeping and mourning, because this place is not going to be no longer a place. It says, weep and mourning over her, for no man buyeth neither buyeth their merchandise anymore. Right? The merchandise of gold and the silver and precious stones and the pearls fine linen, of purple and silk, and of scarlet, all dyed wood, all the manners of vessel of ivory, and the manners of the vessels of most precious wood, and brass, and iron, and marble. So all the whole majesties that make this place great is going to come to naught, and everybody's going to be sad at it because, it's not here anymore, right? Because it's going to be gone, right? So back over here. And it say, and they that remain under her shall do service unto them that have put her in fear. And thou, Asia, that are partakers of the hope of Babylon, and art thou the glory of her person. So all these nations that is in cahoots with this place, is going to be taken down and destroyed also, right? And they're going to be, like we just read over here, going to be in full of sorrow, right? What it says, boom, boom, boom. Or was it boom, boom, boom? Yeah. So standing far off for the fear of our torment, right? So, so a lot of these nations, they're gonna be, terrified at the result of what they see. A lot of people it shocked the world when Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened, World War II. The whole world paused for a second, like, damn, that really happened, right? But this is gonna be, like we said, what's the mathematics we're using? Multiply this by biblical proportions, right? So back over here, it says, woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and decked thy daughters in whoredom, that thou might please and glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. So all these nations that, try to emulate and copy America's style and want to be like them, God said, all right, cool. All that means is y'all look alike to me. So you're going to have to get destroyed with them, right? Because he says, woe unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her. So all these nations that copy this place will be taken down, because they have made themselves like unto her, and has decked thy daughters with whoredom, meaning their philosophies keeping up, with the tenets and policies that America pushes, right? That deck thy daughters into whoredom, that they might please and glorify thy lovers. Because that's what these nations do. They try to please and glorify America and Israel so they don't bomb them too. And it says, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. Thou hast followed her that is hated. You follow somebody that is hated. These people are hated of the Most High God, right? It says, thou hast followed her that is hated. In all her works and inventions, therefore God said, right? I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to waste thy houses with destruction and death, right? Because they rule with the people who God hate, right? Let's see who God hate real quick, because people don't know, in case you don't know what's going on, right? Because God do hate people, and he hate a certain group of people. Let's get it right here in Romans 9:13. And it says this. It says, as it is written, because it's written in the Old Testament. We have to understand that the people of the disciples and apostles were not just freestyling, coming up with whatever stuff they want to come up with. As it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. Right? Because God hates these people. Right? Obadiah 1:9 real quick. Well, matter of fact, not Obadiah. Let's get Obadiah. And it says this, Obadiah 1 and verse 2. It says, Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. Right? So God says, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. You know, meaning it's made them small in population. You know, they're not even, you know, they're dying off more than they're repopulating. You know, they have more old people than they have young people, right? They're not having babies like they used to. You make them small, right? And small in number, right? Because they're small because they're the only odd, you know, bunch out of the group of people. Because every other nation of people have color to them, but they have no color to them, right? Because they are greatly despised, right? He says, Behold, I have made thee small among the nations, thou art greatly despised. Right? These people are greatly despised. Right? Jeremiah 49, real quick. Jeremiah 49. And 15. And it says this. It says, For lo, I will make thee small among the heathen. Let's start at 14. I had heard a rumor from the Lord, an ambassador sent unto the heathens. Right? So God is putting a spirit on these nations to feel a certain type of way about America. Right? It says, I have heard a rumor from the Lord, an ambassador is sent among the heathens. So this ambassador is a spirit, you know, that is sent among these nations. Right? To do what? It says, it is sent unto the heathen, saying, Gather yourself together, come against her, rise up to battle. So the spirit is on these nations to come to battle this place. Right? Come to battle. It says, For lo, I will make thee small among the heathens, and despised among men. So these people is hated. And that's why it says, Thou hast followed her that is hated, in all of her works and inventions thereof, said God. That's what these nations have done. They have aligned themselves with the enemy of God. So therefore, they have made themselves an enemy of God. It says, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and a pestilence, to waste thy house with destruction and death. And the glory of thy power shall be dried as a flower, when the heat will rise and sink over thee. So their power, their thing is going to be dried up. They're not going to have no military structure, no power, no might to defend themselves in that day. Right? It says, the glory of thy power shall be dried up as a flower, when the heat shall rise and sink over thee. Right? Let's get this real quick. Isaiah 47. Isaiah 47 tell us like this and like that and like this, and come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground, right? That's what this place going to do. They're going to sit in the dust, because again, this place have not been touched. Like we was going over the World War II facts, you know, certain as far as like the daily worrying about raids and bombings and stuff like that. They didn't have to worry about being attacked in that fashion. You know, they had other problems here, but they didn't have the constant threat of, you know, fighter jets moving over their city, dropping bombs on them. Right? They didn't have that. But it says this, come sit down in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Right? Because again, this place haven't been touched, right, by a conquering nation. It says, sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For thou said that thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. So America is called tender and delicate because they don't believe in casualties. They don't believe in losing casualties. That's why, Trump is getting so much flack with this Iran war, because of the casualties that America is suffering, right? Now, albeit it's not astronomical numbers, at least they're not reporting astronomical numbers to us, but the public of America cannot stand to turn on the news and see that American U.S. soldier is unalive. It's unbearable to them, right? So they're tender and delicate, right? But it says no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstone and grind in the grind mills. Uncover the locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass the rivers. So it says, take the millstone and the grind mill. So the whole economic, the whole workforce, the whole engine behind this place, right? It's going to cease. Because when there's no more, people not waking up to go to work that next morning. They waking up to survive and fortify their house. Make sure no niggers breaking in to try to take anything from them, right? It says, take the millstone and the grind mills and uncover thy locks. Meaning, everyday society is going to just stop being everyday society. Because when that day happens, you're not going to be worrying about, I got to get to work. Let me get dressed. Let me go try to catch this bus. Let me go stop by the gas station and make sure I have enough gas to get to work. That's going to be the least of your worries in that day. Because, number one, you ain't going to have no work to go to. Because it's going to be a fall of humanity, fall of society. Right? So, you better figure out something else. Because take the millstone and the grind mill. That is the economy. That is the work behind a nation. The millstone and the grind mill. Uncover the locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, the shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, I will not meet thee. This is one of my favorite parts of the quotes, verses. I will not meet thee as a man. Meaning God is not effing around with these people. And he's not going to meet them as a man. It's not no fair fight. Just come on, Uncle Sam. Bring your old ass out here. Just run this fair fade. Ain't none of that. It's eye gouging. It's nostril pulling. Right? It's a nut kicking. Right? It's a elbow dropping. Right? It's dirt thrown in the eyes. Right? Going on here. Because, like I said, I would not meet thee like a man. Right? Meaning he's coming with all power, his whole majesty to destroy these people. Because he can. Right? Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I would take vengeance. I would not meet thee as a man. Right? That's what is going on. He's not gonna man up with these people, man-to-man combat, right? This is a God, right? And he doesn't fight in your mere mortal human way of thinking, right? This man destroyed the Syrian army using mice, an outbreak of mice, diseased mice. He killed 200,000 Assyrians with a plague of mice, right? He doesn't fight fair. You never thought you can lose a battle because mice is everywhere, right? But that's how he gets down, right? He doesn't fight fair, right? He done killed, what was it? The mice had diseases and plagues and stuff, so they died from sickness. The Assyrians, the 200,000 soldiers. Israel, same way, when he sent that death angel on Israel, was killing us with sickness and plagues and stuff. He doesn't fight fair, right? You know, will not meet thee like a man. As for our Redeemer, Yahweh of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. You damn right. So, back over here. And the glory of thy power shall be dried as a flower, and when the heat shall rise that sent over thee. Right? So, that's what's going on. Oh, let's get this real quick. Boom, boom, boom. Ecclesiastes, real quick. This right here. Where that? Ecclesiastes 12:3. And it says, the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble. So in that day, the keepers of the house shall tremble. So yes, these government officials, they're going to tremble in that day because they're not going to know what the hell to do, what's going on, right? It says, in that day, the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men that bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they're few. Because again, ain't nobody going to work that day, right? It says the grinders cease because grinding. That's speaking of working, right? It says, and the grinders cease because there are few. So there ain't nobody going to work that day because all hell is breaking loose. You're gonna be a damn fool trying to catch the bus to go to work when the whole eclipse of the whole world is happening, right? So don't be that person. And it says, the grinders cease, and because they are few, and those that look out the window be darkened. So because it's darkness outside because it's people robbing, killing, stealing, trying to make a million. The corner, the corner, and the corner. That's that Common song by Common and Kanye West. The corner. I can give you the feeling. I wish I can give you the feeling. Right. But yeah, it's going down, right? And it says, and those that look out of the window be darkened, and the door should be shut in the streets, and then the sound of the grinding is low. Because again, no more working, because what you going to work for? Because it's the collapse of everything, right? And it says, the grinding is low, and he should rise up at the voice of the bird, and the daughters of the music shall be brought low. So it's not gonna be no happy times going on. Not gonna be no celebrating, having fun. Again, I'm trying to give you the visual. Picture Walking Dead type of stuff. Picture World War Z. Picture Thunderdome, Mad Max type of stuff, right? In that day. That's the life. Until Christ come and put everything right. Alright? And it says back over here, thou shalt be weakened as a poor woman with stripes, and as one chastened with wounds, and so that the mighty and the lovers shall not be able to receive thee. So ain't nobody gonna want to mess. When they see what's happening over there, ain't nobody gonna want no part of that. They gonna be like, ain't nobody got time for that, right? Let's get let's get 1 Thessalonians real quick. So it says, thou shalt be weakened as a poor woman with stripes, and as one that is chastened with wounds, so that the mighty and the lover shall not be able to receive thee. Right? So, like I said, it's going to be, this place is going to be, when the judgment comes, like I said, no other nation is going to want to be a part of that. They're going to try it says the nation stood far, like I said, told us in Revelation, the nation stood far off, as they, saw this place, get destroyed. They didn't, want no part of that. It says, for when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh. Come upon them as travail as a woman with child, and they shall not escape. It's going to be just like that, right? Isaiah 13:8, real quick, says this. It says, and they shall be afraid. Pains and sorrow shall take hold of them. They shall be in pain as a woman that is in travail. They shall be amazed. They shall be amazed one another. They shall be amazed at one another. Their faces shall be as flames. Meaning, it's gonna be, people are gonna be amazed, astonished, because they're gonna be looking at each other like, what the heck is going on? Nobody's gonna have the answers. They're just gonna have fear and doubt, because they don't know what is really going on, because it's gonna be stuff they have not seen and have not prepared for, right? Revelation 17, real quick. I'm gonna say this. Revelation 17 says this. It says, and there came one of the seven angels which had seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither, I will show thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Because we know America sits upon many waters because they have military garrisons on damn near every continent, or on every continent, and damn near every country, right? They have over 800 and something military garrisons, and there's only 100 and something countries in the world, 169 countries in the world, and they got over 800 military garrisons around the world. You do the math, right? So it says, come hither, I will show you the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. So these nations of the world have committed fornication with the people, with the people of Babylon, and caused them to fall into this corruption, caused this world to be in this state of decay that we see. It says, whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunken with the wine of her fornication, because the philosophies, the way of life that America pushes, and they force the rest of the world to be cool with. Then it says, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman and sat upon a scarlet-colored beast, and full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet in color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having 7 gold cups on her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. So, just he's seeing the wickedness and the stuff that this place propagate. Their way of life, their policies, their whole everything that makes this place wicked and that poison the rest of the world. Right? That's what he's looking at. It says, and it says, and a woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stone and pearls, having gold cup in her hand, full of abomination. So, it's giving you a description of how pretty and glamorous the woman was looking, but inside of it was full of abomination and filthiness of her fornication. Right? And that's what this place is. It's got the glitter and gold, but then it's filled with abomination of their fornication. And upon her forehead was the name written, Mystery Babylon, the great mother of harlots, an abomination of the earth. Right? That's what's going on over here. Right? So back over here. It says, I wish I would have, verse 52. Would I have with jealousy, with no proceed? Hold on. It says, would I with jealousy have so proceed against thee? Said the Lord. If thou had not always slain my chosen, exalting the strokes of thy hand, and stand over their over their dead when thou was drunken. So they over persecute us. They murder the innocent of our people, and they do it proudly, and and there's no justice behind their acts when they do these things, right? So that's why God says, I would with jealousy have proceeded against thee, said Yahweh, if thou had not always slain my chosen, exalting the strokes of thy hand, and saying over the dead when thou was and saying over the dead when thou was drunken, set forth the beauty of thy countenance. So these people are very arrogant and proud in their wickedness and what they do. And it says the inward of thy whoredom will be in thy bosom, thereof thou shalt receive the recompense, like as has done, and like as thou hast done unto my chosen, said the Lord, even so shall God do unto thee. So all the stuff they had done to the Lord's people throughout the annals of time, God is going to do it to them, because it says, like as thou hast done unto my chosen, said the Lord, even so God do unto thee, and shall deliver unto thee into mischief. And that's what's going on. They're being delivered into mischief. That's why we're seeing all this quirky, crazy, stupid stuff that they're doing, politically and elsewise, right? And it says, thy children shall die of hunger, and thou shalt fall through and thou shalt fall through the sword, and thy city shall be broken down, and all thy shall perish with the sword in the field. So it's got a great judgment for this place that's coming. And it says, they that in the mountains shall die of hunger, and eat their own flesh, and drink their own blood, for very hungry of bread, and thirst of water. As thou unhappy as thou is, it says, thou as unhappy shall be, it says, happy shall come through the sea. It says, thou as unhappy shall come to the sea, and receive plagues again. In the passage they shall rush into the idol city, and shall destroy in some portions of the land, in some portions of thy land, and consume the part of thy glory. So this place is going to be destroyed with the thermonuclear fire, and it says, and consume the part of thy glory, and shall return to Babylon that was destroyed. And it says, and thou shalt be cast down by them as stubble, and they shall be unto thee as a fire, right? So they're going to cast them down as stubble, and they shall be unto thee as fire, right? Let's get this real quick. And it says, because it's talking about these people, Edom, America, and their counterparts, and it tells us like this, because they got a special judgment, because God haven't forgot. It says, this is Amos 1:11. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did not cast off pity, and his anger did he tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. Meaning these people is angry in hatred, perpetually against the Lord's people. So God got a judgment for them because they would never stop doing the things that they do to us, because we just read that they have a perpetual anger towards us, right? So God has to step in and stop these people from doing what they have been doing. That's why He's sending His Son to correct these people, right? And it says back over here, it says, and thou be cast down by them as stubble, and they shall be unto thee as fire, and then and shall come and shall consume thee, in thy cities, in thy land, in thy mountains, in all thy wood, in thy fruit, in thy fruitful trees, so they burn up with fire. That's talking about that thermonuclear fire, because like it tells us in Revelation 18 and 16, it says, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stone and pearls, for 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. Because this place is going to be destroyed when them ICBMs, those hypersonic glider missiles hit this place. It says, for 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the accompanying ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea stood far off. So they just gonna be watching, because they be like, dang, what we gonna do now? We ain't got nowhere to go. I don't know if you ever seen that picture that was on the internet several years ago, when they had all the little ports closed, and they had like thousands and thousands of ships just waiting to dock to come in. It's gonna be just like that, in that day. They're gonna be like, dang, where we go now? We ain't got nowhere to go. They done blew the whole country up. Right? What we gonna do? We just stuck here with all this stuff. Back over here. And it says, it then showed the consumed with fire, boom, boom, boom. Let's see. Okay. It says, in thy children shall they carry away captive. So we're going to carry their children away captive, just like they carry our children away captive, right? Isaiah 14:2. It says this, and the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and for handmaids, and they shall take them captive, who captives they were. Thy children should they carry away captive, and look what carry away captive, and look what thou hast, they shall, and look what thou hast, and they shall spoil it. Meaning we should look at what y'all got, and we're gonna rob y'all and take it, just like how they looked at what we got and they robbed us and they took it, right? They took all our resources, all our gold, and everything else, right? And look what thou hast, and they shall spoil it, and mar the beauty of thy face. Meaning they're going to take everything, that all the resources, and the resources going to be taken and stricken and given to a black Hispanic Native Indian man, right? Because it says, for the people should take them and bring them to their place at the house of in the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and for handmaids, and they shall take them captive, who captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors, right? And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall give thee rest from all thy sorrow, and from the fear, and from the hand of bondage where thou was made to serve. Right? So that's the plan, to give the Lord's people rest from the bondage where they was made to serve. Right? Let's get one more real quick. One more really, really quick. It's Joel 3:7. Behold, I will raise them out of the place where ye have sold them, and I will return your recompense on your own head. So God is going to raise his people up out of the place where the Israelites were sold to through the slave trade. And he says, I will raise them out of the place where rather ye have sold them, and I will return your recompense on your own head. I will sell your daughters, I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians. Right? So, because like we just read that we should take them captives who captives we were, and we shall rule over our oppressors, because as this said, I will sell your daughters, I will sell your sons and your daughters to the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians, to a people far off, for the Lord has spoken it. Right? So that's what's coming to this place, right? Revenge, right? Desolation, and the salvation of the Lord's people. That's what's coming to this place, right? You better believe it. You better believe it. Hold on. Yeah, that's what's coming. We don't need nothing else. But yeah, that's what's coming to this place, right? So the Most High God is judging. He's coming back, judge this place, sending his son. We see, as we can see that living conditions was going on, what was going on during the time of war. We can only expect, because the Bible says it's going to be the time of Jacob's trouble like it have not been on the earth before. So using the stuff that went on during World War I, World War II, we can use that as a framework and multiply it by biblical proportions to understand how traumatic and dramatic and catastrophic these times is going to be, that we're going to, perhaps experience as time go on. So that's why we have to keep the faith and keep the commandments and the Mashiach Yahweh Shai. Until next time, shalom, peace, right? And understand we got a God that fight for us, because although we're seeing all of this stuff, let's understand that the Most High God Yahweh fights for his people. So until next time, shalom, peace, we out.